are live. Hello, everyone. We are back with a very special episode of The Deep Dive, the show by GMs for GMs. I am so happy today to introduce my newest guest on The Deep Dive. You know him. You know her. You love her. Brian Liberge, MC for Gehenna Valley, as we all know. But also, which you might not know, is writer for Pulp Fantasy, Defenders of Midgard, Raging Swans GM of Miscellany, and, of course, Games on Demand.
Nice.
Welcome
you did a deep dive for those credits. I liked it.
I do. I proud myself on doing a good amount of research on my guest. So Wes was a little bit easier to do because I just knew him naturally, but I honestly was very excited to do that. I was like, oh, cool. Very professional.
Like it.
But yeah, so today is going to be a very special episode. We're coming hot off the season finale.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Gehenna Valley, which had a super successful run. Very excited. The first campaign / actual play to actually come to conclusion on Gehenna Gaming. So it's a pretty monumental moment here. Clocking in at about, 15, 16 episodes?
I think it was 20.
It was a 20? Okay, my notes are wrong. I apologize. Okay, you know what it is? I think I went to the thought that all the episodes were updated on YouTube, and I was like, okay, I know. So 20 episodes.
Maybe I'm wrong. Still, I didn't do the research. You did the research.
21 episodes, including the kind of the clip show that we had yesterday. Not a clip show, but like talkback.
Yeah.
Still.
The retrospective.
Yeah, an amazing achievement. About 4 to 5 months of continuous gaming. None of you missed a single episode. So first off, congratulations. And before we jump into it, what have you been up to lately, and how do you feel now that Gehenna Valley is, you ran to your first season?
What have I been up to?
Yeah, what have you been up to?
That's it, No. I mean, so many talented, spirited people in tabletop games. I have day job, love day job, appreciate you day job. Thank you so much. I work in technology. Specifically, I work with a product that a lot of mid to large sized companies use called ServiceNow. Mm-hmm. And right now I am doing that work in the healthcare industry in Boston, which is really fun considering that we're living in a pandemic. I've got lots of work to do.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah. So that's a good time. And, besides that, I'm just playing games online like everybody else because can't leave.
Well, I think I can speak for everyone when I say thank you because obviously Gehenna Valley has been a very nice distraction and escapism for a lot of people just in these kind of harsh times, so we can dive into like a sort of tale that can only be told by Monsterhearts, which is honestly a very unique one compared to your typical like slashing through monsters and back alley politics. Which
I really appreciate that. I think the whole cast does. I was at first doing this because I knew that there were some people who I couldn't get into my Monsterhearts games because I can only run so many Monsterhearts games, who had been asking if they could watch. And at the same time, I knew that Gehenna Gaming was looking to expand its roster. So I wasn't sure if there was going to be more than that handful of people watching the show. And we've had so many people come and say similar things that it's made their week better. It's given them something to look forward to. That we've just been overjoyed with the fact that people like it so much.
Well, very happy for you. Very happy for all the cast and their crew behind it. It's been an amazing season. A sensational couple months of television. Or streaming, I guess. Not television, but...
Yeah, but it's the same.
It's just, yeah.
You watching it on your PlayStation, connected to your TV, television.
Well, without further ado, Brian, would you mind telling us, kind of giving us a brief kind of concept summary? What is Monsterhearts?
Oh, okay, cool. Here, I've got the book right here.
For the uneducated.
Ooh, I love this, by the way. I have to explain this real quick.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed watching Gehenna Valley, but I get distracted sometimes. But because when I hold up my book, I only just realized that I'm sure some people sometimes see that it says Games on Demand on
Oh,
the
wow.
side. This is my copy of the book. Let me just be clear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Games on Demand does not own its own copy. So we write it on the side when we go to conventions to make sure it doesn't walk away.
Mm-hmm.
But it just occurred to me just a second when I held it up. I'm like, people probably think I don't even own this game. But I do. It's a great game. It's about the messy lives of teenage monsters. That is the official tagline. But at the end of the day, it's really about the messy lives of teenagers. But it can be a lot easier for us to tell that story when we've got monsters too. I mean, monsters makes it a little more approachable,
Mm-hmm.
even though that seems way like it shouldn't be the case. Like, let's add monsters, then it'll be easier. But like, no, it really does. It's like, oh, I can be a vampire, but I don't want to replay high school necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mess. It's a mess. But it really works. It works really well. Where you play one of these monstrous archetypes that we know so well from film and TV and books, if you like to read like a person. And uh, Avery, the author of the game designer, has done a really great job pairing these monsters with sort of tropey personality types that you might find in high
Mm-hmm.
school. So the vampire might be a bit controlling. The ghost is the person who feels like, nobody really notices them. And the ghoul is the person who is always trying to get like one more thing. They're either living off of somebody's fear or their own thrills. And it just works really well together to put these two things together. It's a lot less, I think, embarrassing to get started and to jump in when you've got sort of this monstrous shield.
Mm-hmm.
And then because you're really going for it, you can have these real emotional connections. It's just makes it such a fantastic game to play.
Would you say that the exaggeration of like the more teenage and like themes, whether it be like obviously growing up in puberty, by since we wrap them up in this kind of easy to digest like fiction, that players are able to kind of put that out there without, I guess, feeling as like vulnerable.
I think so, especially since Monsterhearts really is a game about vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big mechanics in it that you don't see in a lot of other games is sometimes you don't really control your emotions. You just control what you do with those emotions. I said it in episode 0, I think. 5 months ago, y'all remember that, right? 5 months ago when we did session 0. Right, that was sessions anyway.
It's been a crazy ride.
It's been a crazy ride, but one of the moves that I think really surprises people sometimes is turn someone on, because that's usually the sort of the golden safe zone in RPGs. Is you can't tell me that I am attracted to you. You can't tell me that I'm feeling horny, just to be blatant. And this game does tell you that you have these emotions, but it doesn't tell you why, and it doesn't tell you necessarily how you're going to deal with it. You have to decide these things, and that's very much there for our teenage selves, and my therapist will also tell us our adult selves as well. We often have emotions and we don't know what the trigger was, but we still have to deal with that. And that's, I think, something that we're not used to doing in a tabletop game. And I think the monstrous part, the supernatural element to it, makes that a bit easier.
No, I would definitely agree with that. And before, you know what, actually, before I move forward, I do want to tell everyone watching this stream a little bit of a content warning. I know for last time we did Alien, I had warned everyone about the gore and stuff we're talking about. This, we'll be getting some very deep themes at Monsterhearts, specifically about, obviously, what he said, vulnerability, growing up. We're going to get about themes about sexuality, about bullying, probably. All that fun, psychological based stuff that sometimes you might just not be in the mood to hear about. So just warning you all, we're going to try to keep it as positive stream as ever, but obviously we might just go into those areas and fields. So, you have a lot of love for Monsterhearts, and that's obviously anyone's able to see that from just watching the streams or from, I'm sure, playing in your games. You have a passion for a game. So before we even dive into the system, I really just want to know, what is your like personal relationship to Monsterhearts, and how did you discover this game? Like,
hmm I have jokingly dubbed myself the Kevin Bacon of Monsterhearts because
there's like 6 degrees of separation.
it's 6 degrees of separation. If you've started playing Monsterhearts, there's a good chance the person who introduced you to Monsterhearts is somehow linked back to me. And it's like the weirdest kind of humble brag there is, because it's not my game. And there are games that I can say, this is my game, I wrote this, but I don't talk about those games. I'm talking about Monsterhearts. And it's because years ago, I did the timeline once in a tweet. I should have dug it up, but I didn't. I don't remember exactly the years. Go on Twitter and figure it out yourself. But years ago, I was at Gen Con, and somebody, blasted out on Twitter, like, hey, I want to run Monsterhearts at like 11 o'clock at night. Who wants to play? And I didn't know the person, but I really wanted to play Monsterhearts. I had heard of it. I was like, this is such an interesting game to me. I'm that gay, like, let's do it. And so me and my girlfriend, now my wife, went and we played Monsterhearts in the hotel lobby of some hotel with people we didn't know. And I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. She did it, which is cool. Because I think that's the way these types of games work. I know my good friend Tracy is here in the chat tonight, and Tracy already knows what I'm going to say. Like, Tracy loves Torchbearer, or at least likes Torchbearer. And Tracy and I played Torchbearer together for a while. I hate it. I think it's just the worst game. But I don't have a problem with it, and I think really good games tend to be like that. Like, if they hit you in a really like poignant way, that probably means it's really not going to be someone else's cup of tea, because it has that effect. And so that's how I first started playing Monsterhearts. That was fun. That was Monsterhearts 1. And then, because of games on demand, I started bringing it as one of my games. And I run games on demand at PAX East and PAX Unplugged. I literally run it now. My wife and I are like the showrunners at East and Unplugged, and have been for a few years. But I started as just like a regular GM. Well, I started as a player and then a GM. So I'm bringing Monsterhearts, and once Monsterhearts 2 came out, which is really not like a brand new game. It's just like a cleaner, better version of.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You can't find one anymore, and you don't want it. It's just like, unless you really want it on your bookshelf for some reason, there's no point in having it. I'm not trying to trick you or anything. But I started running it. I ran it a ton, and to the point where people have come up and told me, but like, oh, do you remember our Monsterhearts game? And I'm like, no, but tell me about it, because I've just ran this game so much. I've run it at other local cons too. I think I ran it at Gen Con. No, that was the second time I was at Gen Con. So I've just run it a lot.
Yeah, you have a huge repertoire of playing this game.
Right, and it's the game that I wish I had when I was younger. Like, I feel like if I had Monsterhearts when I was a teenager, I might be a little bit more well-adjusted now. Like, this game so speaks to my teenage inner self. And that's why I think I love it so much, just because it really does. It speaks to me, and so many people who, having played it, have come back and talked about how much it meant, even if it's just a one-shot.
Without, like, forcing you to go into like topics you don't want to go into, do you feel like the game has been like helped you work through some stuff, like a sort of therapy?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no substitute for therapy. Go see a therapist. But I think that it's one of those games where I definitely have felt real emotions playing it. And then you have to think about that later on. And that's not the goal. The goal isn't to play Monsterhearts because I can't afford therapy right now. But if you like this game, you're naturally going to start hitting on some things that really make you feel emotions. And my friends will tell you that like I'll get emotional in a game, and even watching Gehenna Valley, you'll see me after a scene and just be like, "Fuck you guys," because like that hit me hard, and that's how we deal with emotions in New England is we swear at each other. That's a compliment. That was a long trail, but I think I answered the question.
no, that's perfect. I'm glad we're going the long trail because I feel like that's how we get the most detail. And no, I'll admit, like, my own relationship with Monsterhearts has been not strange, but I was introduced to the game from acquaintances that had played with this. I'm trying to remember. I know his ID online tag was Ferretheim, and Ferretheim actually wrote supplements for Monsterhearts like Skin Deep.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and like the reskins and stuff like that. So I actually, by proxy, I got to play with those early versions of the skins back in like Monsterheart, like first edition. And I remember someone telling me the concept of it and being like, I've never played it before. It sounds kind of interesting. I think I was actually emerging from a point in my life where I was done playing like fantasy because I'd played D&D for so long. Like I feel like any role player or tabletop player, they kind of get shoehorned into that, and it was just such a unique experience. And I was addicted to it for a while. I was like, this is the game I want to play. I think it's funny that you mentioned games on demand because this past PAX Unplugged last year in 2019, I tried to get my friends into a game of Monsterhearts because I was like, this game, you're gonna love it. Like you just trust me. And it's funny because I could have played with you before, but I just wasn't able to get into the games.
Well, at East and Unplugged, we really do run it on demand. Games on demand is a little different depending on which con you go to, depending on who's running it. They've got a ticketing system over at Gen Con, and it's just different. But at East and Unplugged, we literally make you wait in line for your game, and whoever gets there first gets the game. So, I'm sorry.
No. It's that's not even it. Honestly, we ended up playing Bluebeard's Bride with one of the most amazing GMs.
Fantastic.
I cannot recall his name right now. I don't want to. I do know, but I don't want to butcher it. He actually did Honey and Wax, the anthology. He helped write that for Pelgrane Press, which is an awesome anthology of games kind of based around sex, and I think that's the cool thing that people could check out if they're into that. But yeah, and Bluebird's Bride was amazing, but I remember going into it be like, oh, we have to play Monsterhearts. Like, you're going to have such a great, like, you're just not ready for this type of game. Because they had never played a Powered by the Apocalypse game. Well, we had played Urban Shadows the day before, and I was like, well, let's try something different. And yes, I hopefully next PAX Unplugged convention, I'll tear away from Gehenna's booth and come play Monsterhearts because that's all I want to do half the time.
We've been super happy that the last couple of cons they have put us next to each other. We've got our own little like tabletop corner that just gets more friendly all the time, and I love it. And that's what we tell people with games on demand. I think you really hit it. Is that we don't want you waiting a long time in our line. There's so much to see at these conventions that even though if you really want something, you have to wait, we'd rather you go out and do something. So that means that if this is the make or break game for you over the weekend, that's the only time we want you waiting. If you need to get into Monsterhearts, that's when you show up an hour early. But if you show up half an hour, you're going to get into an awesome game. And if you can't do that, if you can't do that because it's a physical thing, you tell me and we'll work around that. But if you can't do that because you really need to see X panel or Y Nintendo, Nintendo, that's what the kids do, then that's why we've got the other people around us who have a different line system. So there's something that works for everybody. Boom. I'm plugging all the shit. Let's go.
That's good. Yeah, no, this is, I love it. So now I think that we've kind of, set our little personal relationship with Monsterhearts. We've explained kind of what the game is on a base level.
Yeah.
And we talked about the things that we do like. Yeah. Or the stuff that it can do for you and, how you can play this. Let's dive into the meat of the system. We're going back to high school.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I think I was debating whether, because I knew this was going to be a topic I wanted to bring up, but I was debating whether to do this last or first, and honestly, I think it's best to do it first. I want to talk about safety tools and consent.
Nice.
Something that should be in every game. As we would all agree. Gehenna, we have our consent forms. I think that's like that's something that everyone's been kind of pushing in the industry is you want to get these safety tools in, and they're important in most of they're important in all games, but I feel like they're especially important with themes of Monster. How do you feel that safety tools kind of help enrich Monsterhearts?
I think it's so important. Absolutely, I think it's so important. And now we're talking. I think when we talk about safety tools, we also have to talk about the different ways you might be playing a game like Monsterhearts, because I think there's a real difference between an online game and an in-person game and how it can affect you. And I think there's also a difference between a one-shot and a campaign. And I think there's also a difference if you're playing with people or if you're playing with a group that you just got assigned to in line because you're at a convention. Oh my gosh, what did I just set myself up for a nightmare of an answer, but we're going to keep going. We're going to do it.
No, that's what I want to hear.
It's important. We said deep dive. We didn't say shallow dive. So, I tend towards safety tools that I know I'm comfortable with things that get backed up. There's so many good safety tools out there. There's lines and veils. There's the X card, things that I don't even remember the name of. And I think most of them, I should say, I'm sure there are bad ones, and we don't even count those as safety tools, but the real safety tools have merit. But I'll tell you, I know some people who have had bad experiences with some safety tools. And it all has to do with your personality and how you respond to things and how that ends up mixing with the group. And so I strongly believe that even if you've had a bad experience with the safety tool is important. And I don't know anyone who disagrees with me so far. There are people who have. I know someone who sat down at a table and they were using the X card, but they sort of started with lines and veils, and they had never played the type of indie game that they were going into before. They weren't familiar with the X card, and they started listing things that you might X card. So they were like, okay, if you don't like the idea of people gouging your eyes out or killing babies, like these are things that you can talk about. And the person was just like in shock and was in shock for like half an hour afterwards. They're like, this game is about killing babies most of the time, like in the back of their head. And that wasn't what they were trying to get across. Yeah. They kind of just like jumped forward. And I'm not saying anything negative against that person. I don't even know who that person is, but that's just one example of how these things can sort of shock people. My background is in theater arts. I've got my bachelor's of science in theater arts. And one of the things they talk about when it comes to improv work is when you talk about something right beforehand, even if you're talking about not doing it, maybe especially if you're talking about not doing it, it puts it in your head and it tends to it can come out, even if you're trying to make it not come out. It's just a weird human psychological thing. And that's one of the things that sometimes makes me nervous with something like lines and veils. And I've used it to great success. I honestly don't have a problem with lines and veils, but if you watch Gehenna Valley, I don't use it. I've used some other things. I was off track, but let's talk about what I have used. How about that?
Yeah,
that'll help us get back on track.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting. Yeah. I think the first time I ever learned about safety tools, maybe a little bit too late than what it should have. But the first time I ever learned about safety tools was from Monsterhearts.
Oh, really?
That introduced to me the idea of an X card and lines and veils, and I was like, oh, this is something simple. But then when I started using it in my further games, I was like, okay, this is something I can get on board with. It's simple. And I feel like it allows you to, knowing that you have these safety tools, you can kind of push the envelope and stuff, and then everyone can feel more comfortable about it, which is...
Yeah. Well, I think I'm almost positive they were in Monsterhearts 1, and I know they were expanded upon in Monsterhearts 2, and they have a whole section on sensitive issues and stuff like that, which also, of course, plays into the idea of safety tools. And I think they're important. For our game at Gehenna Valley, we used the consent forms that Gehenna Gaming uses all the time. There was some side conversations that happened based on those forms between me and a player. And then what I did is I combined all of the feedback into one sheet. So nobody knows how many people said they don't like creepy crawlies. Nobody knows who said what. We just have this one reference sheet for everyone you can always go back to. And in a way, we had a benefit that a lot of games don't have. We had time leading up to it, and we always have time in between. So we're able to go back and review that at our leisure. And I made sure that everybody always had that. And I think that's good. And whenever you do something like that, when you form a list, you want to make sure that it's clear afterwards that you're not beholden to that list. You shouldn't go beyond it. You shouldn't say, stop bringing up something that's a red. But between sessions or during a session, you should be able to realize that something is making you uncomfortable that wasn't on the list and stop things. Between sessions, you should feel comfortable or have some kind of mechanism to talk about it. I don't like the sentence I just said. It's not that you should feel comfortable, because we all have different comfort levels, but I want everyone to have a mechanism for changing those lists so you can add things to it at the very least. And I hope that we can find ways to do that in a comfortable manner, but I don't want anyone to feel like shit because they're uncomfortable. God knows I'm uncomfortable with things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, completely understandable. And
Yeah.
I would even add that just saying that you have safety tools already kind of eliminates the stigma of speaking out, because I know a lot of players can get intimidated by their GMs, especially if it's like they're only playing it for that one shot. They don't want to ruin everyone else's time. But by saying, we have these safety tools in place, you might feel more encouraged or less discouraged to come forward and be like, hey, this is something I'm not cool with, or this is something I'd rather not see. And I feel like 9 times out of 10, GMs are always pretty cool with that. They just need communication.
Absolutely. And so the tools that I use at Gehenna Valley, so we talked about that, and those are essentially a form of lines and veils, those consent forms. And then we have time out and fade to black. Now, fade to black is written right into the Monsterhearts book. I didn't make that up. I have sometimes been credited with making it up, but I did it, okay? I just use it because it's a good tool that I read in a book. And that means that, boom, you're uncomfortable, you say fade to black, it's over. And what I say, and I don't know that this is in the Monsterhearts book, but what I always say is that is not the time to have a discussion. If we fade to black, it's that's your tool to just move forward. I'm not going to ask you to explain why you said fade to black, because maybe the scene seemed really normal and simple to me and not uncomfortable. And for that same reason, I don't want people to explain why they said fade to black, because I want fade to black to be that super safe tool. So if one person was to start explaining why they did fade to black, the next person might feel like they have to. So fade to black is always, no, we're moving forward. The only question I'll sometimes ask you once we fade to black is, did you have sex? Because that's a mechanic in Monsterhearts that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the only follow-up question I try to ask on fade to black. And then there's time out. And time out is specifically, we need to stop the scene, and I feel like we need to talk about something. And time out is when you get to talk. And we can end a timeout with the fade to black. That's cool. We don't have to go back to that scene. But sometimes this is just something that we want to continue. But I need to stop because you keep pronouncing college as collage, and it's driving me crazy. And that's obviously a silly example. But that's why timeout is there for. It's there because you feel the need to discuss something, not necessarily to stop something. And then the very last one I always use in person is to knock on the table, because it's visual and audible. And sometimes when you're feeling heavy emotions, you can't bring yourself to say something like timeout or fade to black. It's just too hard. But you can knock on the table. And I found that with Zoom or whatever online, I don't notice when you knock on the table. I don't hear the noise. I'm too into whatever's going on. And so I've asked people to Discord message me or Zoom message me if they can't talk for whatever reason. And in all honesty, that's something that I'm still working on, is making sure I see those. Because it's just not as good. But I feel like there always needs to be something else.
No, and I definitely think that, having the fade to black, almost like sounding like the last resort. It's like the oh shit button when someone's really uncomfortable.
And I wouldn't even want to call it that, because I want people to feel comfortable using it. It doesn't have to be a surprise. It doesn't mean that we just went somewhere totally unexpected. The most common reason we use fade to black on Gehenna Valley is because people are getting it on, and I don't need all the description of you getting it on.
And Twitch's TOS will not also allow all the description.
Oh, that's good to know.
I'm pretty sure. I just for blanket safety, I'm gonna say let's.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right. But yeah, you just can't. Not that you can't. Often that's the end of the scene. And one of the reasons why I love fade to black is because it's so cinematic. Like, we all know what fade to black is, and that would happen in so many movies. It's like, once we start with the heavy petting, that is the end of the scene. We know what happens next, and we don't need to see it. I used to use fade to black and cut instead of timeout, and cut just didn't stick with people well enough. I really liked the fact that it's all movie things, but it's not worth it. So we went back to timeout. What else should we talk about? I think that was good.
That was a really great point. I'm glad that we got that first.
Great.
This is kind of piggybacking off the last one, but so the talk you should have to your players. So if your players come to you, they're like, we want to play Monsterhearts. What is and they've never played Monsterhearts before, or maybe they have, but they're we're with a new group. What is the talk you should have to your players before you even get to the table?
Oh, okay. Before you even get to the table. See, that's interesting. It's interesting phrasing, because obviously my experience is I don't have that talk until you get to the table. Oh, you're welcome, Natalie. Natalie says that she likes that I said that I did a good job. Did I say that? It doesn't sound like me. But
Brian did do a great job. So
yeah, I'll say it now. I did a great job. Whatever we're talking about, I was fantastic.
I don't think that was grammatically correct what I just said, but I'm gonna stick to it.
It was good. I liked it. Before you get to the table, so I think the things that people need to know before they start playing Monsterhearts is it breaks the golden rule of role playing a little bit, where it's going to assign you emotions, and you don't have full control over that. Now, you should still be safe. If something comes up and you're just not comfortable playing it, you need to have safety tools present. But that's kind of one of the points of the game. The other thing is there will be sex, almost certainly. Now, you can play an asexual character. You can play a character that's hard to get. That's fine.
You can play asexual characters. Oh, you were just saying that too.
Yeah, there are rules for asexuality in the Monsterhearts 2 book. They're fantastic. And so you might not have sex, but you need to be comfortable with the idea of teenagers having sex as part of the game. And then the other thing is it almost always has queer content at the table. So if you're not comfortable with people of the same gender,
First off, that's what's wrong with you, but that's a conversation for another day.
That's another conversation for another day, right? But this is kind of like one of the big things in Monsterhearts. It really does, and admittedly, it's in the book. Like we tend towards this, and at the end of the day, if you've been playing for a little while, most characters, not all, end up bi or pansexual to a degree. And you can play a straight person who has to deal with emotions sometimes that don't seem that straight. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually a very interesting and fun thing to play. But there's a lot of pansexuality. You're going to probably hit polyamory at some point. if you're playing a campaign,
Mm-hmm.
and you just need to be comfortable with all these concepts, which is it's really good to have it before we get to the table, because I don't know that I want you at the table with me if you're not comfortable with all those things anyway, like you kind of said. I'm not here to pick on bigots, but I do dislike Nazis a great deal. And that's there's a jump there, but it's not that big of a jump these days.
No, not unfortunately, not at all.
Yep.
And it should be noted, like, if you want to play a character that's not, the partying, the social butterfly, the sex focus,
you can do
you
that.
can totally do that.
Absolutely.
But you just need to be okay with other people wanting to do that. You have to understand that's this,
Yeah, you can totally play cis straight guy, absolutely, and have a great time and have it be super interesting. And you can play asexual, aromantic person and have a great time and have it be super interesting. But you got to know that the game is written for these things to come up, and teenagers might act upon them, and you don't control everyone else. And if you're gonna say no to everything, you're playing the wrong game.
Exactly. And I feel like there's also, cues that you can take some interesting character arcs with there and, like, have a development from your characters, starting out as, like, say, the straight cis guy and then evolving into, something more.
Yeah.
Something
or
different.
even vice versa. That can absolutely happen too. Like, you think, you feel like you're one way at the beginning, and you might become a person who really identifies as straight by the end of the session, and that's okay. I love that. It's okay to play a straight person. We want to make sure everyone's comfortable with that idea. It's all right.
Metamorphosis is really like a theme of Monsterhearts, and I think that's going to lead me to my next point. So we talked about kind of what we want to have that talk with players. Not even that you're warning them, but being like, hey, this is what it's all about. So the messy lives of monsters. We kind of already answered this, but are there any other themes that Monsterhearts just inherently pushes with its system and the type of game it is?
One of this is a good question. I like this question because, this is a book. I don't know if we've talked about this being a book yet. There's a lot of there's a lot of like pieces of paper in here, and I forget sometimes all the stuff that's in the book. In fact, I was reviewing it relatively recently, and one of the themes that it encourages you to do, I said to myself, I haven't really been doing a good job of that. And that is the player character's relationship with authority. One of the things that you're kind of supposed to do as a MC in this game is make sure there are those authority figures who help make the players' lives, or the player characters' lives, messy. One of my players at Gehenna Valley is in the chat saying, no, let us run wild. And you do end up running wild, and you do end up fighting against those authority figures. But I think it's important that part of being a teenager in this sense is to have someone to answer to have people who kind of put down limits that you have to work around. And so that's one of the big themes there. And I mean, there's a bunch of stuff. I feel like we talked about a lot of them. If you want a really good list, you know what you should do? You should go to YouTube, check out Session 0 of Gehenna Valley, because I lay out the 4 principles and the 10 somethings. What are the somethings called? Do you remember the somethings?
Oh, the agendas?
The agendas, yeah. The principle. So it's 4 agendas, 10 principles.
I know it's like make characters, the players' lives, interesting.
Embrace melodrama.
Yeah.
Make monsters seem human, and vice versa. So there's lots of little things that Monsterhearts is good at. But we talked about the big stuff.
Yeah, and one other thing I do want to move on to what you should tell your players about this game. Something that Aid just brought up, which I think is a very important thing, is huge possibility for PvPS conflict. Monsterhearts because it's about teenagers, and teenagers are very they're emotional time bombs. They get set off. People get into fights, verbal, physical. So it's not going to be this idea of the part of the party, and the party being like all together and cohesive. You're gonna have people rubbing against each other the wrong way and the right way.
Yep. And not just physical, as Aid again points out. Thanks, Aid. But emotional conflict. I mean, it is rife with player versus player conflict. It's kind of half the point of the game. Like, you are going to be insulting each other. You're going to be flirting with each other. You're going to be hitting each other. You're going to be ruining each other's lives subtly behind the scenes when you're not even there. And like I said, that's not the whole point of the game, but it comes up over and over and over again. This is a game that has rules for when you go into Darkest Self. You can sort of become the villain in the game until you find a way to clear it. And when you are your darkest self, you really are like, you're essentially against the rest of the players. I say party sometimes just to describe the group of player characters, but Monsterhearts, it's not really an us versus them game. There really isn't a party.
Yeah, and I feel like the other thing we're gonna talk about too, later on we get into how you handle your players, but players are going to be in their own scenes. They're going to be in scenes with each other, but most of the time they're going to be separate in the story, and that might be some people might not just be ready, like, are not ready or expecting that. But it's such a different game, but I think that's a part of what draws me to it. Like, yeah,
it's definitely not a game where the majority of scenes has all the players together. It's one or two. And then you bring people together and you pull them apart, and it's a different two people in a scene, which I really love, honestly. I loved because you get mixed intimacy. Like there's a real big difference between a scene with all 5 of my Gehenna Valley people, or when it's just Donovan and Corey, or just Corey and Krina. Those are very different scenes because you really build these relationships, and those social dynamics matter. Give me something else. Let's go.
Okay. So I thought you were taking a dramatic pause. I apologize. We kind of already talked about this, but how can players relate their own personal experiences of growing up to the system?
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Something else. Come on.
Collaborative storytelling. It's big and all, powered by the Apocalypse systems, but it's especially big in Monsterhearts.
It is. I love that. That's great. In Monsterhearts, and this is I'm gonna go into GMing first. MCing in Monsterhearts, excuse me. One of the cool things is that in session 0, there's very specific rules about how to like start your campaign / start your one shot, and you don't make a villain. You don't make a plot or anything like that. It's not the only Powered by the Apocalypse game to do it like that, but it's one of them. And I think that is so big into pushing how much this is collaborative storytelling. So Dungeon World, great game. Love Dungeon World. Dungeon World tells you, don't make a plot, don't make a story. You're going to do these very specific things in your first session. And then it says, okay, session 1 is over. Time for you to build the plot. Monsterhearts doesn't do that. There's never a time where it says you're building the plot. It's all about reacting to what the players are throwing out. And you're primarily reacting to players on 2 occasions, when they kind of sit there and stare at each other and they don't know what to do. Time for you to do something. Or when they fail. Otherwise, they build the plot, and they build the plot out super naturally. And the game even calls the MC moves reactions. That's what you're doing. You're reacting. Yeah. But also, that's what the players are doing. The players are reacting to each other. They make decisions, but so much of this game is reacting to each other. And if you're always just reacting, there's nothing more collaborative than that. There probably is technically something more collaborative than that, but that's very collaborative.
Yeah, no, extremely so.
Extremely so. So I don't know. I never, even when I do one shots, I never know what the story's going to be. I don't prep stories for one shots. In fact, I'm one of the laziest MCs around. I use the same setups over and over and over again, but I never end up in the same story. It's just the way it is. Whether there's a cat who's the mayor, or the whole town is devoted to Dan Aykroyd, and it turns out he was the Dark Power all along. If a lot of one shots end in the school being on fire for some reason, but the stuff that happens before it is completely different.
Wait, has that happened? Has that happened in a lot of your games? Like
everything I just said is from a game.
The school being set on fire.
The school being set on fire is probably the most common ending to a one-shot in my experience. Now, I'm not saying it even happens 50% of the time, but it has happened a lot.
Too much with that. Too much that you have to keep mentioning it for sure.
I'm just saying when I run a one-shot, any kind of one-shot, I always like to tell people, this is it. This is the one shot. Okay. We know the phrase "go big or go home." Mm-hmm. Now, especially with the pandemic, we're doing these one shots over the internet. So you're already home. You got no more choices left but go big.
You just got to go big.
Just got to go big. I go back to my theater training, and when in theater, when you talk about a play, they say how the play takes place on the most important day in every single character's life. Mm-hmm. It's never a normal day. It might seem like a normal day at first, but this is it. This is the most important day in their life. They just might not realize it yet. When you do a musical, they say when something is important, you talk. But when it's so emotional that words aren't good enough to express it anymore, that's when songs happen. It's the same with tabletop role playing. Listen, we've got 4 hours, so let's make this the biggest day in your life. And sometimes that means fire.
Now, is that something, getting to what will be a future topic?
Future topic.
At the end of this episode, anyway. Is that something we can expect to see next season? Is the school?
I don't know if the school's going to get lit on fire because I don't plan things. We just talked about that.
Do you think the players, now that they've heard you, do you think?
Oh, I mean, let's say this. Every player in Gehenna Valley was in a one-shot with me before Gehenna Valley. So they've heard a lot of this stuff before, and the school still didn't get lit on fire. However, spoilers. A lot of things happened. Okay. I don't know that everybody watching this interview was caught up on Gehenna Valley. A lot of things happened. Yeah. And I think in season 2, more things will happen. At the end of The Matrix, Neo flies off into the sky, and a lot of people may not like Matrix 2 because it's not like Matrix 1, but it can't be Matrix 1 because at the end of Matrix 1, Neo flies off into the sky. So they had to bring the second movie to a whole other level.
Yeah,
they didn't have a choice, and you know what? If you get off your high horse, it's a pretty good movie.
I like the Matrix Reloaded.
I like the Matrix trilogy. What? I said it. And I don't think Gehenna Valley Season 2 will be anything like The Matrix 2, but I do think it will be big, and I think things will happen.
People are going to lose their head over things, for sure. They're going to be real excited.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that brings us into our next category, running session 0. I think it's great because we just talked about this as an MC, what level of preparedness you should go with the framework. We just talked about that.
Oh yeah.
Well, we talked about plot. What about setting? Do you kind of try to pregame a setting a little bit before you go through it, or you say fuck it?
So I told you I'm lazy, right? So everyone's gonna get my secret guide to MCing Monsterhearts. When I do one shots at a convention, even online, when I do one shots, what I say to everybody, in fact, I've turned it into a little script. Oh, let me open the script. Oh my gosh. Y'all gonna love this, okay? Where is the thing? Where is the thing? Singing the Where is the Thing song. It's a good song. We're gonna put this on the Gehenna Valley song soundtrack, right?
I'll say you must have some crazy emotions because you're singing.
I love it. Absolutely. Where is it? Where's empty yearbook? Here we go.
Okay.
So the yearbook is what I call that thing that shows up on the screen in Gehenna Valley. And not only do I use it for online games, I've started bringing my laptop and using it in some conventions when I can pull it off, because it's just so useful to me. It's something that I developed while running a 3-season campaign with my friends, and it just worked out really well. So now I've got the blank one that I don't edit. And the very first slide is all about the town. And it says, name of the town, is a former, some industry it used to have. Now just supporting the school and new industry. The area around the town has features. The school is somewhere, and the school mascot is not racist. And this is how I set up every single game of Monsterhearts, with few exceptions. I say to the people at the table, what's the name of the town? And I usually say that it's in a suburban part of whatever state the convention is in. So if you're playing at PAX Unplugged, it was probably in Pennsylvania. And if you're playing at PAX East, it was probably in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And I've started trying to pick random states for the online conventions, because my players are talking to each other about their games and have realized that Massachusetts has a lot of new towns in it. But because I'm from Massachusetts. So great, we got a name. And I say, okay, what industry used to be big but it's died out? They're like, great, lumber industry, manufacturing, all sorts of interesting choices have fallen into there. And then we say, it's not there anymore. We almost never explain why. It was the economy, it was Japan, it was communist, something happened, and that industry died down. And now we've just got this one thing left. What's this one thing?
Mortal blood harvesting.
What?
As Rob says, mortal blood harvesting.
Yes, mortal blood harvesting. That's not a great, as far as industries is concerned, you can't really put that on your welcome to Sunnydale sign. But, some people will be like, there's an orange festival. I'm pretty sure we did that once. It's like, we've just got the one diner that was on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. Like, great, and then based off of that, and whatever state I picked, we throw some features down, like woods, trees, a ravine. If it was a former mining town, we always put in empty mines. Usually somebody comes up with something really interesting, like abandoned train tracks or that one swamp. Great. Then we say, what's interesting about the school? In Gehenna Valley, the school was right downtown. It was at the end of a dead end, and they built like a rotary around the school, which is just crazy, but I love it. Other times as well, it's on a hill where they used to hang people. But like, okay, sure.
It's completely underground.
And then we need the mascot so people can reference it, and the mascot just can't be racist, because we're done with that. That's it. That's every game. And the reason why I do it like that is because if there used to be a big industry and it died down, and now there's a new industry, but it's not as big, that means the school was built for a number of students that it no longer has. So the cafeteria is too big. There's going to be empty tables. There's going to be empty classrooms because the school's just too big for the number of students they have right now. There's going to be empty homes and empty businesses. And all sorts of fun things can go down in those places. It also sets it up to be a town that has technology and things like that, because it used to be flourishing. It can have rich people, it can have poor people, it can have everything in between, but it's not the city where everything is at your fingertips.
It almost pushes the kind of like, as we talked about, like Monsterhearts being about change and like your characters change, your metamorphosis. The town itself is changing. You're in that state of change.
Yeah, and it can give you old people who are mad because things are different, and it can give you young people who are trying to make the change happen too quickly. It just gives you all these opportunities. And unless I'm doing something special for a con or I have a special request, that's how I run it. I was at a neo-futurism convention, which was cool. I mean, I just said the words neo-futurism convention, so we should all be impressed. And we ran Monsterhearts based off of the world of Batman Beyond. So, like, the werewolf and the vampire had, like, gene splicing in them. And it was in a city, and there was a ton of technology. And you know what? It worked fine. But the lazy way that I use, it's there for a reason.
No, it seems to have been working out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Being like one of the kind of like foremost MCs. I almost said GM MCs
I'm an
of Monster.
MC. I'm also a GM and a DM. You can throw whatever. I got all those titles. I didn't want to wear all my medals. I didn't want to seem, too egotistical for the interview.
All right, going on to the next one. I just love how I wrote this down just in my head. So as an MC, your party wants to be in Girls, but you really wanted to MC Riverdale.
Mm-hmm.
How do you handle that player expectation versus the MC expectation?
So I love that because I read this earlier, and I just, first of all, I love the idea of Monsterhearts meets Gilmore Girls. Like, I really want to do that at some point. That just sounds like so much fun. But I think the thing to remember is that this is the collaborative game, and the MC is also a player.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it really comes down to with collaborative storytelling. Now, if these two thoughts are so disparate that we can't find a good middle ground, we got to try. Maybe we have to try another game with this group,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay. I don't play Monsterhearts with the group that I played D&D with for over a decade. It's not the game that's good for us together. But I play Monsterhearts with other people, and I love it. And that goes even beyond the question you posed. But I think I think this is funny. Gilmore Girls and Supernatural has a lot in common. At the end of the day, it's about these people who are dealing with stuff that often feels bigger than them while they figure out who they are. And I think there is a middle ground there that you can find. But I think there has to be communication about that. And between sessions, if you're feeling like you're not getting what you want, you need to open the conversation back up again and talk about it. And it can't be the players versus the MC. So sometimes you have to adjust the game. Sometimes you have to pick a different game and play this game with somebody else. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of room for compromise. And as much as you may have wanted to present two very different feeling towns, I feel like I've played the game that's half Gilmore Girls, half Supernatural. And I think the way I run Monsterhearts tends to be with a lot of humor and levity, even though we have very serious moments. Mm-hmm. And so I don't see that as a problem, but it's all about communication.
Very good answer. So we're still into Spreading Session 0. I love this analogy that kind of the book sets forth about NPCs. So creating NPCs together, and the whole idea of like your NPCs are stolen cars.
Yes.
Like, so normally most GMs out there, they'll make an NPC and they're realize, okay, they're at the mercy of the PCs. Mm-hmm. But even more so in Monsterhearts, and it's almost like you kind of just have to just touch and go, just send your little sailboat down the river and watch as the river of the NPCs just thrash them all about, because they're gonna do that. They're tools. How do you feel about when you're creating NPCs? Do you get?
Oh, I love it. Okay, this is great. So NPCs as stolen cars is such a great way for Avery to have phrased it. I love it. I think it resonates really well. They're there when you need it. You can have a lot of fun with them, but they're not yours. And you have to remember that at the end of the day, these aren't yours, and so you need to not be attached to them. So if you're watching this right now and you're not caught up on Gehenna Valley, I want you to pause, and then you're going to fast forward a minute, okay? I'm going to go like this. You'll see that in the fast forward when it's safe for you to listen again. Great. All right. Great. So I killed Chase, and I just snapped his neck super quick. Killed Chase, one of the NPCs. I didn't know I was going to kill him coming up. I knew it when in the moment I knew that as Zeus was coming into that scene, he he was going to do something dramatic, and really it was a choice between Chase and Tabitha, and I was like, well, no, let's do Chase. Boom, he's gone, and that was a really important moment that is still resonating. I might have an idea for an NPC. Oh wait, hold on a second. Let's pause a second. Okay, welcome back. So I might have an idea for an NPC. It starts one way, but you've got to let that NPC develop and fill more space as things move on. Mm-hmm. So I might not realize when I make this person's mother that they're actually working for the dark power until later on, when there's been a couple of failed rolls, and I realize, I really need to bring someone in who's working for the dark power. Who would it be convenient to, and who would it make sense right now in the moment? And it's like, oh, of course, it's Mabel, the werewolf's mom. She's actually been in the dark power's pocket this whole time. Mm-hmm. And you gotta go with it. You've got to drive that stolen car and see if it hits a wall. That's a bad metaphor. Don't do that. Well, with the NPC,
yeah, like the idea of like drive it like you stole it. So it's like you go, like you say, go big or go home. Like your NPC.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it works the other way too. I'll give you an example. So I have another Discord that's not Gehenna Gaming. I'm sorry, but it's true. I have a Discord that's just about Monsterhearts because I'm such a big fan of Monsterhearts. I
believe I'm on that Discord.
Yeah, I think you are.
I'm pretty sure I am.
Anybody can. If message me later if you want to come talk about Monsterhearts. Just be aware that we don't talk about anything but Monsterhearts on it. That's really all we talk about. And we're running sort of an experimental game right now, where a bunch of people are taking their characters from games that are, that they played at one point. And we're having them all play together in a game. So they're from all different countries. We made up some like fake program in Boston where they would be like future leaders for a week, and they're getting the chance to interact with each other, interact with characters that they've heard about but they never got to be in a game with. Mm-hmm. And it's really fun. And then there was a character that I was playing in a game, a character named Kenzie. And everybody was like, well, we want to play with Kenzie. And I'm like, well, I can't do that. I can't make Kenzie an NPC because they're my player character. And I know I am too emotionally attached to this character. And what ended up happening in that game is the MC really needed a break and was found that they didn't like being an MC. So I ended up being the MC in that game. And I was like, all right, now I need to get rid of Kenzie. Because, again, I can't keep this person around as an NPC. I won't drive them like a stolen car. So I sent them to Boston. I said, oh, they're going to get an art scholarship and go to this special art school. Everyone was like, oh, well, that means they can show up in our game, right? I was like, damn it. They caught me. I'm so lazy. I use Boston all the time. So I was like, but I knew that this NPC wasn't my stolen car. So even then I've said, yes, you can talk to them, but they're just not around most of the time. In D&D, there's almost a joke that sometimes the DM makes their own character. Oh
yeah, the DMPC, yeah.
Yeah, the DMPC, and they're like, for whatever reason, they're almost always a paladin, and and like all of a sudden you're writing your book instead of playing a game, and you just can't do that. You can't do it. Mm-hmm. So that was some extra stories in there that may not have mattered, but that's what you get, Ryan.
No, that's interesting. I feel like that's going to put the point across more than us just kind of like explaining it from like a rubric or something. So I'm glad you're able to levy these like experience, and this is right. This is why I chose you, Brian.
Oh, thank you. I mean, and you've seen it anyway. Like I make the NPCs collaborative with my players at the beginning. They're not. They were never my babies. I don't bring my babies here because I don't like killing babies. I like blowing up stolen cars.
And I'm sure for anyone that is still catching up with GV, there is one stolen car you'll be interested in seeing. Blow up, that is. All right, so other possible settings that aren't just high school.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And so they talk about it in the book, too. They say, you don't have to do this in high school. They mention college. I think some people are definitely more comfortable with college.
Oh yeah,
because
your characters are 18 and
because
like
your characters are 18, and
yeah.
some people just aren't comfortable with the idea that people who are younger than 18 have sex. They do, by the way. This is a thing that happens in real life. But or they feel like they would just be more comfortable doing like crazy things. Like if you're playing, you might be playing a teenager, but you might not be comfortable beating another teenager with a baseball bat, pretending to do that. And that's something that might come up in Monsterhearts, and I get that. No, and that's no judgment. I know I did the secret silly voice, but really I'm not judging you. We all come at things at our own comfort level, and we have our own experiences that help build that. So you can do it in college. That works great. I have talked about. I've never done it, but I have absolutely talked with a friend about doing it in like a setting like The Office.
Oh, that's not what I thought you were going to go with it at all. That's
absolutely, because I think small office spaces have so many high school equivalencies.
Or even like they're just interns, like,
Yeah.
future leaders.
Yeah, the future leaders thing, right? I really want to run one at summer camp. I really want to run one at a gaming or anime convention.
Okay, so interject just because I want to share my own personal story. Summer camp, for the people that they're still in here, if Aid and like Kay are watching, we just finished up maybe like 2 weeks ago an entire season at summer camp Sparrow. And it was awesome. Like,
yeah,
that's like one of my favorite settings because you're isolated. And I always set my games in like the 80s, and people think it's because I have a boner for the 80s. It's not. It's because there's no cell phones, and cell phones just make everything easier. So if you remove that, it's cool. But no, summer camp's awesome.
Yeah, great.
I actually recently talked to you about it. Like I wanted to run. It would just require the right party, but I did want to run a Monsterhearts in like a psychiatric hospital, like an institutional ward.
It definitely requires the right players. You want people to be on board. But I think both of us were just like super into the New Mutants trailer.
We were,
when we had that conversation.
And the movie just did not do it for me. So I was like, this is what I want to. And I always like the idea of like, it gets content warning gaslighting, but I always like the idea of like you being a monster and people being like, no, you're not, and you're like, well, am I really a monster? Like, am I?
So, Tracy in the chat just recommended Retirement Home. And while that seems like a funny idea at first, but you think about it, like there are these authoritarian figures there, and you might not have picked where you are. It's a mix of a bunch of different people. You could totally do it. It would be super interesting.
Like a cruise ship. I think it's even like the
a cruise ship.
So like even the stuff like cruise ship and summer camp. Like summer camp where you're the campers, one thing, but summer camp where you're the counselors and it's a job, and now you're managing all these little ass kids.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Military so clearly school.
So I have done a private school. As a one shot on request, and that was really fun. I also have done so I live really close to Salem, Massachusetts, so I did one where it was literally Salem, Massachusetts in October, which is just a mess. That place is a mess in October. So but yeah, private schools can be really fun, and I can see how the military school, that's just like private school plus.
Yeah, to like maximum. There actually is. I'm gonna see if I can link it really quick in the chat. There's a really awesome stream I actually thought was pretty cool called done by Roll For It, Avalon High School, where
Avalon High School, I've heard of this.
Yeah, where they play at it's literally I don't know if it's actually, it is medieval time. It's a Arthurian legend Monsterhearts.
Yeah.
And it's great. Take a watch of that. It's just such an interesting concept. So like,
I haven't watched it myself, but I've heard them. I've heard of them, and I think it's such a cool idea.
It's an amazing what kind of toolbox you can kind of get with these.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about running session 0. We've talked about talking to your players before they get to the table, and we've all talked about our own experiences. Now,
we talked about so many things.
We talked, and we're barely getting to halfway there. So we'll try to cover this last category, and then we're going to break.
All right.
So we've talked about a little bit of this. So handling your players. So obviously players choose skins. Skins are like your classes in Monsterhearts, but so much more. How does each skin bring a different theme to your season?
Oh my
Or
goodness.
your one
Okay.
shot?
Let's do this, all right? So, there's a few standout skins that I think can really make things different. And to the point where Avery absolutely recognized this as well. So in Monsterhearts, the original, the OG,
Oh, I know what
there
you're
was a
about talking
skin.
about.
What?
The Chosen. Is
The
that...
Chosen, right? The Buffy. It's a great skin, but Avery took them out of the second Monsterhearts because they felt like when the Chosen was in the game, they tend to be the center of the story. And then they made them for Monsterhearts 2 anyway, and they threw them up on their website for free, and you can go grab them. And I think my experience has been when the Infernal is in your game, the Infernal often becomes the center of the story. And I think the reason why is, one, people want to save the kid that's connected to this dark power. And two, the dark power is like really easy to latch onto as a villain. You know, it's really easy to villainize this person who is, giving a kid commands.
Well, what is it? What's the thing for the spoilers?
Okay. All right. So we're gonna do this in a minute. In a minute, it's safe.
I mean, look at like Corey and Castillo and like Zeus and all that crazy stuff. How that became the menace or the storm for the end of the game. Yeah,
absolutely. And I actually am pretty happy that there was enough stuff going on that I don't think Gehenna Valley was too Corey centric. I don't think it was too Zeus centric. I think Zeus acted as well. We're going to start talking about hot dogs. This is the hot dog for the story often. So hot dog is a term that I stole from the wonderful world of Disney Imagineering, and the hot dog is the thing that you can see in the distance that gets you walking, and it's not even necessarily where you end up. It's just something that makes you want to move forward. In Monsterhearts, they give you 3 right at the beginning. They say, hey, for the first session, you should either plan a party or start a fight or have someone go missing, and that just gets people talking and doing stuff. And for us, I think Castile and Zeus was a great hot dog. It gave people reasons to keep acting, even if they weren't necessarily dealing with they directly. So yes, Infernal often can be the middle. I think the thing that makes the Infernal.
Should we?
Oh yeah. Okay. So the Infernal can absolutely do that sometimes, but not all the time. One of the ways I love to see Infernals played, and I'm not telling you how to play your character, is the people who really love it and they never see the Infernal as a problem. They're like, this Infernal has never done anything negative to me. They've never stolen my soul. There's no contract there. They, yes, sometimes I do stuff for them, but they do so many things for me, and they just love it. In the Infernal move set, it's really up to you whether you choose the moves where you're bringing people to the dark power or not. You never have to recruit if you don't want to. It can always be your own special source of awesome sauce. So that's the Infernal. The Infernal is one of those things. The Chosen is one of those things. There's another skin up on Avery's website called the Serpentine, who can do the same thing. The Serpentine is all about family legacies. And sometimes the mystery of the Serpentine can absolutely become a big plot thing. One second. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
It'll happen quite often. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's cool. And then I think the Queen adds its own dynamic.
Oh yeah, with the gang.
There's already a side. Right off the gate, it's like, okay, like y'all may have like a friend or something, but I have a gang. So, if we're picking teams, I got one already. Like everyone else is already behind to an extent, and I think that really changes the dynamic of the game. But in ways they all do. But it all depends on how you play the character, and I don't think I think most of the skins, not I shouldn't say most of the things, I think all of the skins have enough options that you don't fall into playing it one way. I don't think there's any skins where I see people always playing the exact same tropes. They're so open-ended. And it's how people see their character and how those characters combine that I think really make things interesting and keep the game fresh each time.
That was a very good answer and a very good explanation.
Boom.
We're gonna. Oh, I lost my notes for a second.
No,
we're fine. So going on to the next one.
Yeah.
Which we talked about, like managing players and like being like, hey, we're not gonna have everyone's not gonna be in the same scene together. How do you handle like spotlights and then in just general managing your players' individual scenes and giving people that equal time in the limelight? You know.
So this is one of those things where I think you need to get buy-in from everybody else too. It's not just on the shoulders of the MC. I think if you put all of that on the MC, it's too much. We have to be aware of when things are leaning more towards one person than the other person. And we need to communicate between sessions when it's not happening as well as it should be. And here's where I give all the props to my players in Gehenna Valley. They have been really, really good about communication between sessions. And I think every episode we get better about balance, about time. And to an extent, I think when you play a campaign of Monsterhearts, there are just times when there's some really heavy stuff happening in one direction and you might not talk for an hour or so. And it shouldn't happen frequently, but it might happen sometimes. And if it is happening once in a while, it's probably awesome. And I hope you're having a great time just sitting there watching. You know, to an extent, being an MC in a Monsterhearts, once you like get over the nervousness, there's so much spectacle. There's so much of me just eating popcorn through the little popcorn emoji, and just like having so much time watching people go back and forth, and I'm just waiting to react. That I hope that the same thing is true of players, but it should not be happening frequently. One of the things that I do in Gehenna Valley, and I do it in things besides Gehenna Valley too, that my players have told me they like, is I'll say, well, let's put a pin in that. You know, we'll be having a scene and like things will be happening for a while, and I know I want to jump somewhere. We don't necessarily have to end that scene, but we do need to go somewhere else for a little while. Yep. Sometimes I'll say, okay, next session, I know you want to do like 4 more things, but we've got Geraldine waiting in the wings here, and they really don't have anything to do for like 5 in-game hours. So we're going to come up with a reason why you can't, in character, why you can only accomplish one of those things. So pick what's most important, because life doesn't always work out for ourselves. We're going to do that one big thing. We're going to get to Geraldine, and then we're going to see what we have time to do on Saturday in-game. But that's all. It's all communication. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and it kind of takes that, like, it stops the player from scripting too much of their character. Like, oh, I want to do this, this, and this, and you're like, well, you don't.
It's a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be playing feral, so and it's just such a natural urge, though. It's a very human thing. And part of open communication is just reminding ourselves of what we've gotten ourselves into. You know, the game is Monsterhearts. We need to be feral. We need to force ourselves not to plan too much. And we need to talk about it when we didn't do a great job of letting other people in the scene and giving other people's moments, and we need to work on it. So I don't think I handle my players. I think... and I don't think you meant it like that. Anyway. But I think what I do is I facilitate conversation.
No, very good answer. I've actually recently had it like a few sessions ago where I had a scene between an NPC and a player, and I didn't realize until the very end. Aid and Ash could tell you this. Like the scene went on for an hour, and we stopped, and I was like, all right, let's take a break. And then I was like, whoa, did we just do that? Was that scene an hour long? And everyone's like, yeah. But everyone was hooked in. Everyone was like, yeah, So
And it can happen, but we don't want it to be a regular thing.
exactly.
You want to be aware if at all possible.
Like if everyone loses themselves, it's okay, but they shouldn't be. But yeah, it should be reserved for those bigger moments, and I get that, and I agree with you there. So more about like managing. Managing might be the wrong word I used here, but
we don't know. The words are hard.
Managing the PC's character arcs throughout the season. So this is more for campaign play.
Not at all. No, don't even try. I don't even try. So what I do is I look at where people's XP levels are, and this is kind of in the book. And when somebody hits 3rd level, I know that I'm roughly like halfway through the game.
Yeah.
And I look and I see, all right, are the stakes big enough? When somebody hits 4th level, I know I am in I'm heading towards the climax in a rocket car. And I want to make sure that the things that need to get done, get done. But I also want to make sure that it ends messy and there's a lot of loose strings. But I don't manage people's. I don't do it at all. I don't plan their character arcs. I don't manage their character arcs. I check in with people. We have conversations. Sometimes we talk about how they might feel like they would have been further along right now, and we'll make some choices to try to drive bigger choices in game.
Yeah.
But nope, none of this game. Character arcs, they either happen or they don't. But I think they almost always happen. They just might not be the character arc you thought you were going to have.
So when you see when someone gets their 5th and the 5th advancement or the season advancement, you're like, okay, it's time to light every firework in my toolbox, and then
when someone hits 5th level, it's time to end the game, or it's time to end the season. And I try not to have more than 2 more sessions after that. Everything the fan needs to blow up. Never mind hit the fan. The fan's got to just be sending blades in every direction. In Gehenna Valley was actually really interesting. We got in our rocket car at 4th level when someone hit 4th level, and things ended before anyone hit 5th level.
Yeah. But
they ended so naturally that we probably could have had one more episode and extended that party scene more. But I wanted to do more than that. Sometimes you don't want to wait for that last pin to drop, especially if you're going to have another campaign season. You
always want them handled for. And yeah, I want to ask a question here, but I'm going to leave it till the Gehenna Valley portion because I know.
Okay.
So the last point before we take a break, it's kind of a double point. So we talked a little bit about a party cohesion and the idea that Monsterhearts thrives on that interpersonal conflict, whether physical or emotional. Now, something that always tends to be an issue with some groups and something some people are better at than others. How do you facilitate in-game conflict and avoiding that spilling out into real life where people are getting their feelings hurt?
I've given you the same answer so many times. It's all about communication. Sometimes you have to stop the session and communicate. But you almost always have to communicate between sessions. And we need to be honest with our emotions. We need to be honest when we need breaks. This is a game where you experience real emotions, and they absolutely could have lasting effects. And the only lasting effect we really want to have is to form better friendships. We need to talk about things, and if something went too far, we need to adjust our behavior. And if something just hit too close to home, we need to talk about it so we can move forward. But I can't stop those things from happening. I can be aware of what people's limits are, and get my surveys out ahead of time, and know your greens and your reds and your yellow lines, and try to be as aware of that as possible. But there's always going to be something that sneaks up on us. I don't think it's about controlling it. It's about making sure people have the tools to stop it, and then the tools to talk about it.
Have you ever had, not to ask you to name specific examples, but have you had that where you've had the game end and you kind of just have to sit down with everyone or 2 specific players and been like, hey, we need to talk about this because obviously this has gone to a boiling point that we weren't?
Absolutely. And when that happens, I try to fall back on like a business communication tool, which is also a theater thing. Everything goes back to my theater degree, which is to talk about myself as much as possible. Like, I need to talk about this. You know, I was uncomfortable. I noticed some things that I want to make sure that what I think I saw, was it really happening or was something else going on? And I think that often helps facilitate conversation. So people might, as the MC, GM, DM, people might go to you in private and talk because it's a little easier.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I think it's really important that when you bring it to the table, you say, what I always say is at least one person talk to me about this. I never say how many, ever. I never say who it was. But at least I can get the conversation started. And no one is going to try to do their Sherlock Holmes math in the back of their head and guess who it is. You know, we respect every player the same amount. And nothing's frivolous when it comes to our emotions.
That's such a good point to end on. Now that we're ending, but we are going to take a break. We've been talking for an hour and a half straight, just about. And a lot of super interesting points, and honestly, this has been, I've been super happy talking to you about this.
This has been fun, but I need water in my cup.
Exactly. So I'll see you guys, and we're going to take a 5-minute break. We're going to be right back. We're going to hit the bathrooms. We're going to get a refill of water. We're going to tend to our survival needs, and we will see you in just a second. Thank you, everyone. 5 minutes coming at you until I actually hit this video right. Who knows? Hey everyone, we are back. 5 minutes. Was that 5 minutes? I don't know. Did we cut that a little short?
I didn't pay attention. Sorry.
We were just so excited to get back into the swing of things that we're here. We're having fun. I got my refill of water because I would just ramble on without it. Ooh, what's on that mug?
This mug?
What's...
Well, this is my official Gehenna Gaming mug that you can buy from the shop link below.
Oh my god, can someone throw up that shop link below? Seriously, can you
I don't know. Are we the mods in this chat?
I guess I'm going to throw up my shop link.
But it's below anyway, right? You don't need it in the chat. It is below.
Nightbot. Yeah. Good thing we have our mod, Ashley, in this.
Thanks, Ashley.
Hey. All right. So, we've had our break. Talked about players. Talked about the session 0. The questions beforehand. Now we're getting into the meat of things. We're running the actual game.
Uh-oh. Wow. Jeez. Okay.
And what better... So I'm going to wrap these next 2 points together.
Okay.
What better to start with one of the most important things that... As an MC running the game, an MC must do as in hard moves.
Oh.
The idea of failing to make progress affecting the game. You know, you obviously get experience when you fail a roll.
Yep.
And then something that you question you posed, which I thought was perfect for this. With failures, you're often reflecting on options on how to respond, or with complications to introduce. Mm-hmm. What makes for the best choice by the MC in your experience? So, let's talk about hard moves.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's tough. Okay, so in Monsterhearts, the hard moves they're called reactions, and there's a bunch of choices. And I've been doing it so long. Sometimes I do things that aren't even on the list. To be honest.
So, what is a hard move for the people at home that don't know? I'm sorry to interrupt.
So a hard move is again, it's not even mentioned in Monsterhearts, but it's a concept of the sort of the big reactions of the I don't know. How do you define a hard move?
See, it's weird because you can use hard moves / reactions. We usually use them when someone fails because it's like your way of moving, but you don't. It doesn't have to be like that.
Right. Well, so generally in Monsterhearts, let's talk about Monsterhearts for a second.
Monsterhearts. Yeah.
So in Monsterhearts, when someone fails, you have a reaction, and they don't tell you which reaction to use. You just have a list of reactions, and they are things like. Put them together and separate them. That's pretty straightforward. You give a reason to either bring characters back together, or you bring in a reason that they have to separate. The gym teacher shows up and says, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here." Yeah, now you're separated. The mom says, "Oh, can you run this basket of cheese over to Gretchel's house?" And those are really, I think, very straightforward reactions. Then there are things that are less straightforward. It's things like turn their move back on them. So whatever they were just trying to do, spin it back on them, which it doesn't work in all situations. It has to make narrative sense somehow. And there's another one here called Herald the Abyss, which the book gives you some examples on, but it's essentially saying, clue in that bad things are going to go down somehow. Mm-hmm. And choosing which one you use. Herald, not Harold. Sorry. If you're watching on YouTube, one of the people just was talking about an NPC in Gehenna Valley named Harold. And I'm not saying to herald the abyss. I'm saying to herald the abyss. Okay? Thank you.
But Harold might also herald.
Yeah, Harold can be a herald, and Harold can herald the abyss, but we don't herald the abyss. Okay, herald is not a verb, and we don't hit people with herald until an abyss happens. That's not what we're talking about. Whew, that was a lot. Okay, hold on. Dual water break. I love it. Good. So those are the reactions, and I think if you're looking at a game that talks about hard moves, some of those would be considered hard moves, and some of them will probably be considered light moves. Mm-hmm. Because when we talk about hard moves and light moves, usually we're talking about severity of reactions. But Monsterhearts doesn't do that. but the question was when how do you figure out what to pick? I think my number one rule is what makes sense narratively the most. So if I have an instinct because I'm reacting to someone trying to punch somebody, if I'm reacting to someone trying to punch somebody and they failed, I really want the reaction to be about that punch somehow. So am I bringing in a character into the fight scene because I know that it would make sense for them to be nearby and that'll really change the dynamics? That's great. That's a good reaction there. And do I know that this fight scene is happening on a giant pile of asphalt? Well, if it's happening on a giant pile of asphalt, maybe this is the time to separate them. That wild punch throws their momentum off. They go sliding down the other side of the pile of asphalt. Anything you can do to make it in the moment. If the players feel guilty, they feel like, oh, that was really my fault that this thing happened, not like the MC chose off a list. If they totally forget the MC was involved, you did a great job. Good job, you making the players feel guilty, making them feel responsible for their own failures. And if you can't do that, and sometimes you can't, don't sit there struggling for forever. Pick something simple, or have something happen off screen. Sometimes I will just say something happened and move on.
Even if you don't know what happened.
I try not to do that. But sometimes what I'm doing is I'm introducing a character who it wouldn't make sense for them to be there yet, but it does make sense based off of multiple actions that have happened for them to have a time to come in. And they'll see them later. They'll see the results of that reaction later. But that is what I want to do the least. What I want to do the most is tie it into exactly what they just failed at. And that takes practice. It's an improv skill. The more you run the game, the better you'll get at picking those reactions, I think. And besides, everyone here is here for a good time, and they're not like judging you. They're not looking at the list of reactions and being like, oh, I really would have taken a string in that moment. Like it's just not happening.
It kind of reminds me when we were talking about like, something happens off screen. Something that I've been using in my last campaign, when I want to kind of start building the idea of a threat and foreshadowing it. I say someone off screen gets a string on you.
Oh, that's good.
Or just someone gets a string on you, and they're like, "What?" And you're like, "What do you mean someone gets a string?" I'll be like, "You'll see."
I like that. That's nasty. That's nasty. Oh, oof. I think there's a game that I really love. Hold on. I do this all the time in Gehenna Valley, so y'all should be used to it. So you can't get this game anymore, okay? It's Marvel Heroic.
Really? Wait, they stopped making that?
Yeah. They didn't want to. That was a kind of a judgy sentence, but Margaret Weiss dropped the license, so they stopped making this years ago. But people are working on Cortex Plus in more generic versions, and you should be able to get that soon. But you can, I believe, still pick up the Cortex Plus Hacker's Guide, which has a generic version of this game in it. And what's really great about this system is that there is a pile of dice, black dice, that sits in front of the GM. It's called the Doom Pool.
Uh-oh.
And sometimes the hard move is just to add dice to the Doom Pool. And to me, that is a very visual version of heralding the abyss. And that's, I think, why I like the fact that you said somebody gets a string on you. I like that so much. It reminds me of the Doom Pool. Cortex Prime is shipping soon. Thank you, Tracy. I knew they were close. Because that in horror games, in games with any sort of dramatic tension, the idea that things are getting worse or things could get worse, or you just added to the general danger of the world. I feel like that's such a great intangible emotion. I love stuff like that. So I don't. That had nothing to do with your question. The bonus.
No, but that's something like as a GM you can use. It's like a very visual and like more emotional response than just saying something. It's
love it.
Love it. You okay?
I love it.
This next one is a little piggybacking off the last one. But
okay.
It's sort of like your personal preference. Do you mind giving them some like your favorite examples of hard moves that you've used?
I don't know. Jeez, it's tough. I feel like I tend not to remember how something came to be because things move so quickly. Hold on a second. I got a little wait.
Hydrate.
Don't worry, we won't edit that in post. It'll be fine. Oh, sorry, you were drinking. So I don't remember. Like when they happen. Sometimes I'll tell you that much. So no, I got nothing. You have to ask like my players that question when you do a different episode, because they're probably more likely to remember than me. Like which ones were hard moves? I think in Gehenna Valley, and this happened a while ago, so we're not going to do spoiler moves. I'm pretty sure that I remember some now.
Okay.
And these happened a little while back. The whole Jack the Fairy King kidnapping Elias, those were hard moves. Krina's mother dialing the mysterious fuckface on her phone, that was a hard move.
The mysterious one.
Right. Who was that? My players were speculating after the game. They're like, who is that? I don't know. Well, it's definitely not Karina's dad because she loves him. She wouldn't call him that in the phone. Be like, well, clearly you don't get her sense of humor. But yeah, those are two that jumped to mind. I loved those. Those were really good. Or Mrs. Abel not really being there at the end of the fight scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Although I'll say that I can't take full credit for that. One of our players, Stephanie, essentially handed that to me by pointing out during a break that wasn't she supposed to be somewhere else, and then it was in the back of my head that maybe she is still somewhere else. Yeah. What else you got? Boom.
There we go. Lots of.
We can't just keep drinking. We're drinking too much.
I'm trying to hydrate here. Okay, so what would be your advice to MCs presenting obstacles and issues to each character in a session of play? Like
what is that? What is that?
So I guess how to set these hurdles up for these characters too. Well, I feel like
do that.
They set them up themselves.
They set them up themselves. I only give them something to overcome when they fail. And they're constantly setting up their own problems. They love giving themselves problems.
They're
hoisting
like their
favorite
themselves.
thing to do. Yeah. So no, I got nothing for you.
It seems like to me what kind of the base when it comes down to it, it's like, how do you run Monsterhearts? You don't.
You don't. I mean, like there's great information for the MC in the book, but it's all about letting yourself react. It is the anti Dungeons and Dragons in that case. Like you don't do prep work. Sorry.
All right. So what about taking the player input? Because obviously there are still some stuff you do have to do behind the scene. How about like designing menaces and the overarching storms? Because they always say that you have a few menaces and the menaces become the storm.
What are you talking about?
That's
in this book?
That's in the book. Yeah, they talk about the villains they're called menaces, or I don't know.
No, they're not. Are they?
I can pull it up. I have the PDF.
Villains 111 to 112. All right, hold on a second here. I'm calling you out. I think you're thinking of a different game. Villains. Introduce villains sparingly. Don't spoil it.
Oh, I looked up. Am I spelling menace wrong? Maybe this was the Monsterhearts 1 thing that I just kind of kept on to. I do remember that.
Maybe it is a Monsterhearts 1 thing that they dropped. I don't even own that. I think I own the PDF somewhere. Yeah. Because you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds very much like a Dungeon World thing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Monsterhearts 1 had a lot of influence on I'm sorry, I feel like Dungeon World had a lot of influence on Monsterhearts 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, even Natalie's saying the same thing, but like I think that was Monsterhearts 1.
Yeah,
I don't know why Natalie sounds like Dr. Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb. But yeah, that's Monsterhearts 1 right there. I don't know what you're talking about.
Just for people who don't like, so no, I'm not crazy. Menace. When you create a villain or a cult of vampire worshippers arrive in town, or the police launch a major inquiry into a mysterious death, you have the perfect opportunity to create a menace.
Yeah. Hey, so you're in the Monsterhearts 1 PDF right now? Do a Control F for hard move together. Do they actually say hard move in the first one?
They do. Yep.
Yeah, and they don't in the second one.
That's crazy. What? You know what? I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I've read. Like, I have the Monsterhearts 2 PDF. Like, I bought it, but I think because I'm like, okay, I've like skimmed over the updates. I've never realized that the terminology changes. Cause I'm like,
but that's cool though. Because we were talking about earlier how a lot of the changes between 1 and 2 are like really slight. You know, it's changes on perspective. It's cleaner. Monsterhearts 2 is way cleaner than Monsterhearts 1, and I think these are good examples of that. So, great job. That was planned. That whole thing was planned, everybody.
No, that was a really good like kind of like. Well, so obviously, but okay, so when you're making these like obstacles, obviously you're not making them. The players are setting it up.
Yeah.
But bunny ears, I guess again.
No, it's spoiler.
Moosey, it's spoiler. Yeah. But obviously, like you knew, like Zeus was gonna be, or Castile, like you knew that was gonna be a big thing. Maybe that you didn't know, but eventually that came to where you were like, okay, like he has his own plan, and Corey didn't decide that. So how did you, I guess, come up with that?
Let's talk about that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So the idea of Castile was absolutely the brainchild of the player Kay. And Kay had a lot of ideas around that, but I fleshed it out as we were going. And generally, I was only adding things to Castile when there was a failure, you know, as parts of my reactions. I need a motivation to use one of these reactions. Let's flesh Castile a little bit more. I had no idea that Castile was Zeus until the session I said it. Like, you know, like right before I said it. I don't remember what inspired it. It just made sense. And even then, I questioned it for several sessions. Maybe that was a false lead. I really didn't plan that. I did not know if Zeus was going to show up in physical form. I knew it was an option. I thought it would be really cool. And I toyed with the idea in my head. But I really had no idea whether it was going to happen or not. I certainly did not plan for Bridget to fight Zeus until the players started hinting at it. I didn't plan for Bridget to be Aphrodite. Yeah.
Or Zeus to get his.
Yeah, I mean, once you give them a villain in physical form, I do expect them to physically fight at one point.
Yeah.
But you know, and that was so the end of the show that there's only one way for that to end. They were gonna stab him to stabby. So there's nothing left but body that's not moving. Yeah.
That's well, I'm gonna spoil. I'm just gonna talk about it vague. So I keep
Spoiler
doing
over.
this, but it's like But it's crazy how like stuff like that works. I guess that like you're kind of doing it. Not to say you're doing it the seat of your pants, but like you're obviously doing it as you go along. You're improvising. That happens to just work every time that you make these like memorable.
Well, I think it works because of what we just talked about a little while ago. Is the best reactions that I can come up with are the ones that have everything to do with what I'm reacting to. You know, that's what they are. They're reactions. They're reactions to what just happened. And if you're always reacting to what just happened, then it feels like natural progression. And the players are doing the same thing. The players aren't planning. They're trying to be feral. And if they're trying to be feral, then they're reacting to something else that just kept happening. So the arc forms really naturally. We don't plan it. One of the things we talked about yesterday on the retrospective is how impressed I've been with the tarot card readings we worked into the show, because I don't have the tarot stuff memorized. I've been working on my tarot card readings, that I have to reference the books, but they've all seemed so eerily on point, and they've all been live pulls. I haven't looked through the deck for like the card that makes sense. Heck, I don't even know what the card means sometimes when I'm pulling it. I have to look it up in the book. But as long as I'm reading it like the character would be reading it, it's easy enough for us to find why it makes sense, why it seems planned. And it's just, I think that is the beauty of Monsterhearts and games like it, is you don't have to plan an arc, because the arc happens naturally. Because if we're all reacting, then we're working on a curve just by it, because no one's going in a straight line. That is a weird metaphor, but if you're planning, then we talk about railroading, you're going down that line, you're working through the story you planned. But if you're not planning, if you're just reacting, well, that's never quite straight. So you either got a spiral staircase or you got a character arc, and the character arc metaphor works better for what we're talking about right now.
All right, that's a really great answer to that, honestly. At the close, so the question that we mentioned was put off to today was about reactions, with the whole idea of how to respond with either complication or conflict. So that was something that we specifically added for this episode that was asked for the retrospective.
Yeah, good job, Rob. It was Rob's question.
Let's give a shout out to Rob.
Shout out to Rob!
Okay. So... So we're getting off the whole all right, designing things and pre-planning out, because you don't plan for it. You've said it a bunch of times.
You got questions about planning? Just throw them up.
Yeah. How about keeping pace?
Oh,
through the game. That's always that's not even just for Monsterhearts, but that's for every game. How do you keep the pace up? Knowing when to adjust the pace.
I have no idea. I don't know when to adjust the pace. It's true. It's absolutely true. Well, I try to look out for a couple of things. I try to look out for conversations that are going back and forth and not moving forward. And to shut those down and move on to another scene. As a group in Gehenna Valley specifically, we've talked about how we want to try and remember and remind ourselves, if necessary, that if we find ourselves going back and forth, to remember that there are mechanics to help resolve that. If somebody is saying, I want to go to the mall, and the other person is saying, I want to go to the movies, and they just keep saying it in different ways over and over again, we have to remember, you could spend a string, and if you're not going to spend a string, we're going to go to another scene, okay? That's pacing 101. There you go, right there. Is if we're stuck, we can stop. We can go out of character for a second and say, use the mechanics that we have, or we're doing something else. We're just going to tell everybody they went on like that for 3 hours. So that's pacing rule number 1. That's all I got there. Pacing rule number 2 has to do with pacing over the length of the campaign. That means that if I'm running a one-shot, I generally run my one-shots as 4-hour one-shots. When I take my break in the middle, I come back and I remind everybody that it's go big or go home season. And then once we're at 1 hour, I tell people, listen, we're at 1 hour. Now is the time to make the biggest choices you've ever made. And when we're at 15 minutes to the end, and I feel like we're still moving too slow, we stop rolling dice.
You light all fireworks.
Yeah. We stop rolling dice, and I say, what do you want to do? Be like, I want to do this. Great. You do it. This is what the reaction is next. And I'll start literally talking faster. Now, obviously, I don't do that in a campaign. I try not to, obviously, because we don't have those time limits. But we talked about when you're at 3 strings, it's time to take a look for what are people driving towards and how can we make it bigger. When we're at 4 strings, it's time to get in that rocket car. Those are big deals. And also, I think I introduced this into one of the Gehenna Valleys. I recommend that all MCs, when you're at a convention or in your friendly local game store and you're looking at all the dice, you get yourselves one of these, okay? You see that? This is a smiley face die. It has all sorts of different faces. This is the most useful die I have ever purchased in my entire life. No matter what game you're running, if you're running out of time, you have someone do something, you roll the die, and you go, oh, sad face, it didn't work out for you. And you come out why it didn't work out for you. And it's great for doing like montages at the end of the game to let people feel like they had some sort of resolution, or just trying to like get things moving really quickly so we're not doing back and forth die rolls. Everyone buy one of these things. There you go. I don't know who makes it.
There was the plug we needed. Okay, cool. So I feel like we could skip this how to improvise monsters because that's all we've been talking about.
That's all we've been talking about. You better be improvising.
Yes.
I don't know what game you're playing.
All right. I kind of mentioned this with the safety tools, but now we moved on from safety tools. Do you have a general oh shit button when drawing a blank or unsure how to position the next scene or action in the story?
Make someone else do it.
Okay.
So you'll hear me say in GV sometimes. I keep saying GV because that's, I think, what the most common reference point we have here. Plus, if you don't know it, you can just go to YouTube and watch all the episodes. I'll say, all right, here's the beginning of the scene. Corey, you have initiative. And there's no actual initiative system. That just means I'm making you speak first. If I don't know what to do next, and that only matters when the players also don't know what to do next, what I do is I introduce trouble. And it's some kind of immediate trouble they have to deal with. And in Gehenna Valley, the whole season went from Tuesday morning to Saturday night. You know, we didn't get a full weekend. But that's not necessarily how all Monsterhearts games play. If you don't know what to do next, it's also totally okay to say, check in with everybody, see what the next big thing they care about. You know, we do check-ins in Gehenna Valley, and check-ins are a great thing to do. You can do them in the middle of your session, it's fine too, and just be like, all right, well, what is the most important thing to your character right now? And if nobody has anything important to do in the next 5 days, then great, congratulations, it's Friday now. That's okay. It's totally all right. In fact, I would say it's normal. And you should go with that. You don't always have to have something right then and there, unless you're doing a reaction. And if you're doing a reaction because they don't know what to do, jump days, that's fine. If you're doing a reaction, but they have all sorts of things they want to do, they just happen to fail. If you've got nothing, just do a really simple one. Take a string on somebody. That's fine, because they've already got the initiative. They've got the inertia. Let them keep going.
Like, reactions shouldn't be like punishments. They should just...
Right, and they're not punishments. And especially if you're drawing a blank at what should happen naturally, do the simplest thing you can think of and let them continue the scene. Because you don't want to slow down that momentum.
If I guess if it's played right, you'll never even need like that oh shit button. They'll just keep pushing that story along. And
absolutely, yeah.
Players are the real tool.
Yeah, the players are the real tool, and it's okay to jump time. You know what I mean? Because we're all talking about prom, and you thought we needed 2 weeks to do prom, and that makes sense. You know that you would have a heads up about prom. So at one point we're done talking about prom, and we skip a week. Great.
All right. Wow, I wasn't sure we were going to get through all the points before the Gehenna Valley stuff, but we got through everything.
Wait, we just got to the Gehenna Valley section?
Now we're at the Gehenna Valley section, which...
Oh, wow. I thought we had already started it. Okay, cool.
No, that's the last... Well, we touched on it a little bit, because specifically I wrote, this is where I just get to grill you. I'm going to...
Oh, okay. Lightning grilling. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not lightning.
But just obviously because, you know, this... Gehenna Valley is you and obviously your player's baby. It is the culmination of all your hard work. I guess it's more of like a juvenile now. It's gone through its freshman season.
Sure. Okay.
And really, like, I feel like what's the best way to talk about running Monsterhearts than talking about the game that happened? And yes, we have been bringing it up, and we'll probably skip a few of these questions. But
okay,
are you ready for the hot seat?
Okay. Yeah, my seat is hot. I love it.
All right. So, we're going to go back before even Gehenna Valley was made. Oh. What made you want to think that you wanted to do a Monsterhearts stream or choose to do a Monsterhearts stream on Gehenna Gaming? Like why?
Okay, so we already talked about this. Come on now. Come on, you already forgot?
Well, yeah, no, I just little brief from like reminder.
Little brief, right? So I had been running some Monsterhearts games. Like I said, I have that Monsterhearts Discord where we all talk about our games. There's that joke that nobody wants to hear about your character. If you like Monsterhearts and you go to the Monsterhearts Discord, we want to hear about your character. We want to hear about your games. That's essentially what we're there for. So people kept hearing about games that were happening. And when they would get excited, they would want to know what happens in the next session. You know, they were waiting for the next episode, and they were like, well, can I just watch? Can I just watch? And if people are saying, can I just watch? That to me is a really good sign that people want to watch, you know, because they're literally asking that. And it just happened to coincide with one of the High Council members talking in their Discord about how we really want to expand our Twitch offerings. And I said, okay, especially with the pandemic that was going on, I'm kind of bored. So I just threw it out there. It was like, you know, this isn't something that I do. I feel like I'm good at running Monsterhearts, but I'm not like a internet personality. Do you want me to run Monsterhearts on your channel? And they were like, yeah.
How's Monday sound?
I think I might have picked Monday. I think they may throw some days out and be like, yeah, Monday works for me. You know,
and Monday Night Monsterhearts just sounds better.
It does sound good, and I think that's part of the reason why I picked it. In all honesty. Woo!
All right, next question. We're gonna keep going.
We're gonna do it.
So, Monsterhearts not traditionally a horror game, and Gehenna Gaming being like a horror-based, you know, community and Twitch channel for RPG specifically. How did you feel about being the first campaign to be non-horror to run on Gehenna Gaming? Because I was trying to think back, and like every game's been themed pretty much horror.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even join the Gehenna Gaming Discord after meeting y'all at the conventions because I don't play horror games for the most part, and I don't run horror games, and I never really thought about Monsterhearts as a horror game. But after PAX East, this last PAX East, a friend of mine who I know outside of gaming, but it was a part of Gehenna Gaming, messaged me on Discord, and they were like, hey, someone is talking about you on the Gehenna Gaming Discord, just so you know. And I was like, oh, okay.
Good or bad? Or
well, it was a good thing.
Oh.
So I was like, well, let me jump onto this Discord and read this conversation that's happening about me. And spoiler alert, it was Kay who ended up playing our Infernal. They were talking about Monsterhearts and how they got to play Monsterhearts at PAX East and what they liked about it. And will call Kay a professional hype person. They're so good at like getting excited about something and then getting other people excited about something.
I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I literally just had this conversation where like Kay sent me a message and she was like, hey, I was talking about this game you ran, how fucking great it was. And I was like, damn, I ran that game like 2 months ago, but I really appreciate that because that was my like, good compliment for the day.
Like Kay should really go into advertising or something. But yeah, because I didn't really think of it as a horror game, but Kay had already sort of made the argument that it sort of was for me. Like I didn't do that. Because if anything, I kind of said, I don't know if that's true, you know, but it had become a part of the Gehenna Gaming discussions going on. And people had already started talking about, well, it's kind of horror, but it kind of isn't. But like, it's good enough that we want to talk about it and we want to experience it. So it didn't. It never really occurred to me that I was the first non-horror stream. I kind of already felt like I was the person in Gehenna Gaming that was already straddling the line. Like I'm here because y'all seem cool, not because I want to watch movies with you, because I just feel like I wouldn't enjoy the movies you want to watch because they're scary.
I want to say that as much as I enjoy horror movies, I love rom-coms, and will never be ashamed of that.
Okay, so maybe that's not the best metaphor, but yeah, and I think we've brought a lot of horror elements up into Monsterhearts, and I think Monsterhearts has some anyway. I think Natalie did a great job of making Bridget scary sometimes, absolutely. It definitely plays with a lot of things that are traditionally horror elements. I mean, vampires, werewolves, things like that. So it's definitely a different take, but it never really dawned on me like I'm rocking the boat here, Gehenna Valley.
I see. I wouldn't even say like you're rocking the boat, but more of like it's an achievement. You know, it's.
I do feel that I achieved something. I don't feel. I will say this. I'm proud. You know, we talked about the seven deadly sins yesterday. But I am very proud of what we did. I'm proud of how many people have enjoyed our work. I'm proud that how devoted everybody was to it. I think we did a good job, and I had a lot of fun doing it, and I look forward to doing another season.
The fact that I remember when I tuned in, there was 52 people at a concurrent time viewing the stream yesterday. Like that's pretty good. That's pretty good numbers.
Yeah.
For us specifically.
We've had some really good numbers. You know, there was one episode where we took an extra break as a safety tool, and we didn't lose a single person during that break because the people who follow Gehenna Gaming know how important that is, and they just wanted to support us in that moment, and like that meant so much. Boom.
That's okay, and I guess this is going to be tied in with the piggybacking again.
Yeah, we're piggybacking.
How do you feel being the first campaign to reach a finale on GG?
I learned that we were going to be that. It didn't even dawn on me because I don't know like the full history of Gehenna Gaming. I was like, really? Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, that's neat. But like, it totally snuck up on me. But I love it. I love that we've been so consistent.
Like Gehenna Valley really it's kind of be funny because in the like when Gehenna hopefully Gehenna keeps growing like that's
I really hope so.
And you know I feel like you're definitely like a pillar in our server. Like you're a regular. You were one of the people you see a lot of on there.
I think the Gehenna Gaming Discord has become the Discord that I am most active on. Absolutely.
Indoctrination at its finest.
Which is indoctrination. I thought you said. I missed the in. I heard Doctor Nation. I'm like, what the heck? But I love it, and I said it a few minutes ago. It's like I stuck around because I love the community. The community is so good, and I don't need to, want to be like do the grisly side of horror to love all the people that are there. And I know I'm not the only person like that on the server.
Oh no, yeah, for sure. All right. Sorry, I'm actually setting up something for the end of the episode.
What?
So, something to kind of go back to now. Actually, no, I'm going to throw this question out because you didn't have any original concepts for the story or framework for Gehenna Valley.
I had no original concepts.
Everyone built that themselves.
Yep.
Was there anything that you were kind of hoping that you wanted to introduce into the game that kind of got rendered null? Like, is there something you're like, oh, I wish this would have happened? Not that this would have happened, but this is a theme I really wish we could have played with, but we just didn't get around to. Nope. Okay.
I got nothing.
Hey, no.
Plus, we're not done.
Exactly. I don't want to spoil season 2.
Right.
What was the most unexpected... I know you probably touched on this yesterday.
It's all right.
What was the most unexpected moment for you in Gehenna Valley?
Oh my gosh, there were so many good ones. I mean, my players have definitely done a great job giving me emotions at times. We've had some really good like one-on-one scenes with Bridget and Wolf breaking up, and Karina and Corey in a car, like really talking about their emotions. I definitely didn't expect to be so angry at Rob playing Donovan for not kissing Wolf for 27 years. I was with the fans after a little while. I was really with the fans, just being like, "You do it already! Come on!" That was probably really loud because I'm wearing a headset mic. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It should be loud.
But there's been lots of things that definitely hit me hard, but that's one of the reasons why I love the game. Love it.
That's great. It's such a sensational season of television.
Sensational.
Okay. So we're gonna because we talked about you didn't really like have to balance anyone. How do you feel overall about everyone's character arcs through Gehenna Valley? Did you feel like?
I mean, it's a good question. Everyone's arcs were different. Mm-hmm. I think Krina and Donovan's character arcs were definitely more lopsided. I feel like they had a much slower build, and a lot of their arc happened toward the end. I think Bridget and Corey kind of had the most like full character arcs, but I don't think that necessarily one was better than the other.
Yeah.
And I think Bridget's was almost a little lopsided too, where a lot of her emotion was at the top, and then she had to get out of there.
Yeah, like in the middle. Something that I've really appreciated seeing Natalie do was the idea of like, okay, like in the middle of the game, I know there was a conversation had where it's like, well, I want Bridget to kind of change, and you guys made that happen where she was talking to one of the teachers. And to me, that's honestly probably was my favorite part of the whole season, was hearing that conversation, because unfortunately that tends to happen with a lot of people playing the Queen, where you kind of get this aversion to that skin of the person playing it, because you kind of have this idea that person has to be mean to you. It needs to be the queen bee, when not necessarily, but that's kind of the stigma that comes with it. And seeing, Bridget kind of evolve past that, and with that conversation, I thought was really cool to watch.
It was really cool, and we talked about that a lot yesterday. So absolutely check out yesterday's thing, because so much of that wasn't planned. Like, we knew we wanted to do stuff, so we had a focus on making sure there was opportunity for moments, but what those moments were, we really knew very few of them going in. But that's why communication is so important. And I have to call Ashley out on her bullshit, because I have that grown-up move now.
Oh my god.
Because she's talking smack in the chat about Wolf, saying Wolf's arc was a line. And there's definitely some things that Wolf, as a character, didn't move on too much. Maybe like Wolf's relationship with his father, as an example. But also, I think Wolf did a lot of this emotional bouncing. So like, maybe it wasn't an arc, but it was like, okay, I'm over here, now I'm over here, now I'm over here, now I'm over here.
Which I feel is very fitting for the mortal.
Right. What was I saying earlier? I was saying when you're constantly reacting, you're not going in a straight line. You're either going in an arc or you're going in a spiral staircase. I think Wolf got the spiral staircase,
He definitely a literal roller coaster.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is going to be we obviously know Gehenna Valley is going to have a second season.
It's been October 26th.
But I do remember might have been a month ago, might have been a little earlier, probably about a month ago now. Ooh. I remember one of the questions posed, you were like, I'm not sure if Gehenna Valley was going to have a second season at all.
Oh,
like, it was an unknown thing. This is kind of like a hard-hitting question.
Oh.
So, would you have been all right closing the book on Gehenna Valley as a one-season story, and would you have handled it any differently if it was?
Yes, absolutely. If I knew it was going to be a one-season story, I definitely would have had one more episode, maybe two more episodes. And I would have let the party play out longer. And I like to end Monsterhearts, whether I'm doing a one-shot or otherwise, in like a little bit of a montage to let people sort of jump in time a little bit and show that things go on, while leaving even more open-ended content,
like a time skip kind of deal,
not necessarily a time skip, but when TV shows show you like the glimpses of the next episode, and it's like next time on Supernatural, and you just get all these moments of scenes. I love doing that. I do that live at the table, and it's one of my favorite things to do, especially with a one shot, because it lets people go out there and be creative, because they know it doesn't have to be linear. They know they're never going to follow up on it again. And I definitely would have wanted more of that ending, because I feel like those type of scenes makes you realize that those characters aren't done. Even though the show is over, they keep going on. And I think that's really satisfying. So I feel like I would have I would have that last episode I would have ended earlier so we could do more of the party, so we could have a much slower resolution episode. But I don't think I would have, you know, changed the plot or anything like that.
To evolve so naturally.
Yeah. But I also think some of the players would have made different decisions had they known that it was the end of the episode. A couple of PCs may have showed up to a certain swimmer's household and murdered a certain parent, you know, had they thought the story was over, just to have done it. I'm just saying, you know, as an example.
Not like that still can't happen now.
Exactly. But... Now we have time to do it more naturally. But if it was the last episode, it may have just gotten done.
Was there a part of you when you were like going through Gehenna Valley that you were like, yeah, like I think this is the end of the story, or did you always kind of have in the back of your mind that you were going to do season 2, even if you didn't want to?
No, I didn't know. I didn't know. We started talking about the potential of season 2. Me and the High Council, you know, our programmers, program managers at Gehenna Gaming. Once one of the players hit level 3. Because I know from my experience that's when things start changing. But we didn't have but the end of that conversation was, all right, let's talk about this when somebody hits level 4. In all honesty, like we talked about some options, but like we didn't decide anything. And then when somebody hit 4, I had a new conversation with them, and I had a conversation with all the players. And I didn't know exactly how we were going to handle. I knew at, you know, right around when somebody hit level 4 that there was going to be a season 2. I didn't know what the transition between season 1 and season 2 was going to look like till like a week before the last episode, you know, because you have to keep watching it because it's all reactions.
Now, quick spoiler moose.
Spoiler moose.
All right, so we know that 2 people obviously changed their skins in the finale. Okay, I'm gonna end the spoiler moose. And again, that's all I want. End the spoiler moose. Okay. Did you ever consider the fact that like characters wouldn't be returning for season 1? Like players would not roll up. Players would bring in new characters.
Absolutely. Yep. That was an option that was on the table for everybody. I thought some people might take do it. Everyone chose not to, but I knew it was a real possibility. And it would have been a legit thing, and it would have been cool. You know, we would have found a reason. I would have wanted to find a reason to have those characters go somewhere else physically, because I don't want those people to become my used cars, my stolen cars. Okay.
I was just about to ask you that, because when you know that those characters are kind of going out of the season, and this is their like finale, you kind of can treat them as NPCs, because you're like, whatever, let's just go off the rails.
But they can treat them like stolen cars.
But you don't want to, yeah.
Right, and while they're still being played, I might be more inclined to do murder death things towards them. But in Monsterhearts, death is not ever necessarily the end of your character, so it's easier for me to do that. It's up to the player if death is the end. So I'm comfortable killing my players anytime, really.
And I do feel like maybe like there's something like when you were saying earlier, like, wouldn't it be cooler if this character's leaving for the season and they're not coming back? Like, wouldn't it be cooler to know that they still continue to exist on, even if it's not within the story?
Yeah, if they didn't die, let them exist on somewhere else. But I don't feel comfortable taking a character that was loved like that like someone put a ton of like emotional energy into, and then just making them a side character.
Yeah.
It's not like because the world of Monsterhearts is so dangerous, not just physically but emotionally. It's not like, say, D&D, where I've got a relatively safe city where they can open up a shop, and I can say that, you know, nothing's going to happen to them there unless it's like a cataclysmic event. I don't have that option. If you live in the town of Gehenna Valley, shit's might happen to you.
Yeah, you're on the cutting board, like.
Yeah, so like if Wolf had come to me, if Ashley had come to me and said, you know, I think I'm done with Wolf, I want to play someone else, I'd be like, okay, well, let's find a reason why the Freemans have to move to a new town, and we would have easily come up with a reason because the Freemans are awful.
Yeah, and that would have been a really sad moment seeing Wolf go, but like also it would have been like you have the goodbye moment.
Yeah.
And see him off on the bus or off to the airport.
Yeah. Yeah. And if for whatever reason Ashley decided to do that like between seasons, I would totally want to do something at the beginning of the next season to like herald that, to give them that moment.
All right. We've cleared through so much information. I have one more question for you before we get into the end.
Okay.
Like the ending, the credits things.
I'm ready.
Now, I'm sure people have been asking you this. I'm sure this is everyone's mind. Actually, I have 2 questions for you. I'll say.
Oh, shoot.
The serious one's coming. There's a joke question coming second.
Joke question.
But
New question.
Serious question first.
Serious question.
Can you give us any information regarding Season 2 of Gehenna Valley?
Oh, you want like a hot thing?
I want a hot take, yes.
Okay. You know what? I will. I wasn't planning on this. I really wasn't. If this was did you write this into the thing?
Yes, this is.
I didn't read it well enough then.
It's at the very.
I didn't know this was coming. So we've already told everybody that we're gonna start with Halloween. We're gonna jump right to Halloween night.
Oh.
That's gonna be session 1. It's gonna be great. Here's what I was planning to keep a secret, but I'm not gonna keep it a secret because I want your viewers to come away with something. I was trying to decide early on if I wanted to do Halloween or I wanted to do something else, and I felt like I had to choose between one or the other. And Halloween is what everybody like really, really wants, I think, all the time, to the point where I think it's overplayed. And so I was really thinking, I won't do Halloween. I'm going to do something else. And finally, after especially talking with my players, came to the conclusion, we'll just do both. We'll just do both things. So we're starting with Halloween night, okay? And assuming we get past Halloween night, it's Ren Fair season.
Oh my God. We're getting medieval in here.
We're going to get Ren Fair.
That is amazing.
You like that?
You heard it here, folks. Yeah, breaking news.
Breaking news.
Only
on Deep Dive.
If you didn't think this was going to be about Gehenna Valley even just a little bit, you were sorely mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know how you got that impression.
All right, and the second question. Before the game started.
Yep.
I don't know if you remembered.
I don't.
I was like, when we were coming up with NPCs, I was like, hey, if you ever get the chance, I have a specific NPC.
Oh my gosh! I forgot about that.
I would love if you would bring me it. So, 2-parter.
Oh my goodness.
Is there a future in which Nick Francia stars as a guest star on Gehenna Valley? And 2.
Nick Francia? That wasn't the name, was it?
No, that's mine.
No, but you came up with like a character.
Yes.
I even
Callie from the Valley.
Callie from the Valley. I just found the pin. I pinned it so I wouldn't forget, and then I forgot about it because it got buried by other pins.
Is Callie from the Valley going to show up anytime soon?
So let's talk about Nick Francia for a second. So I've talked to some people about this. I don't know how I would do guest stars. I haven't figured out a way because I'm so bad at guessing about what's going to happen in an episode. We were joking about this the other day, me and the players. I named one episode A Waning Assembly because I really thought that everyone was together at the beginning of the episode. I thought they were going to be together for like 30 minutes and then they were all going to go in different directions. And they didn't. And so people were asking me later, why did you call it A Waning Assembly? What does that mean? And I was like, well, I didn't think the assembly was going to stay. I really didn't think so. So when you think about bringing in a guest star for an episode, like, I don't know if this episode is going to last 30 minutes in character or a week in character. I have no idea. So how do I bring in a guest star, get them in and get them out cleanly? Like, so
okay, that is the guest stars. Also, I want to interject. I did say my last name wrong. It's not Francia. It's Francia. It's a little different inflection.
You said your own name
Yeah,
wrong?
We were in the moment, and I just...
Oh, someone called you out in chat. That's why you had to admit it. Ah, that's funny. But Callie from the Valley, you know what? I'm not committing to anything, but I believe there is an open seat in the homeroom.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. After past events that we will not mention.
I'm not giving any specifics because I don't want to do spoiler moose right now. But yeah, and with a Ren Fair, I need all sorts of NPCs.
Callie from the okay,
Callie
you heard it
from the
here.
Valley.
There may be a possibility. It's a strong 90 to 10. No, strong
90 to 10%.
90 to 10%.
I like that.
Of Callie from the Valley.
Callie. Oh.
Sorry, Ghost Alley. You win some, you lose some.
Yep.
But I have grilled you so much. We have talked about Monsterhearts for 2.5 hours.
We did.
I thought we were. I'm so. First off, thank you for coming onto the show.
Oh, this was so much fun.
Thank you. This is like I knew I wanted to do Monsterhearts. I was like, oh, I need Brian on here. Like, and then we were supposed to do it last week or no, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I can't. And then it just ended up.
It worked out really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it would have been good either way, because either we would have done the deep dive right before the finale, and that would have been like, go check out the finale, like,
yeah,
or we're doing the like second retrospect.
But there was a bunch of stuff that we got to talk about that we wouldn't have been able.
Oh
to
yeah,
talk
for
about.
sure, and I think that really lended itself to the show here.
Yeah,
and thank you for being so eloquent and just talkative of all the points. We went over a lot of stuff, and for a game that's like roughly like Monsterhearts is what, not even 200 pages, I think, or maybe it is. Monsterhearts is very easy to learn. I should tell that. They're literally, you could show someone the skins and like core reference sheet, and they could get that system like that.
It's not 200 pages. Yeah, it's 175 pages.
Yeah, as compared to like before this, we did Alien, which is like roughly about 400 to 500 pages of stuff.
Yeah, so you got to get into like the mechanics more.
But we still talked about this for a good almost 3 hours. Oh, okay. But we're not playing favorites here. But seriously, Brian, thank you for being guest here on the deep dive. I would not have chosen anyone else to play to talk about Monsterhearts with, except maybe for Avery.
Yeah, I was about to say, come on now. But when you finally get Avery, if you want me to come back on and be like your Ed McMahon, we can do that.
We can definitely do that. You know what? I've talked about the idea of having people sit in my spot. Well, we joked about having Wes being in my spot and just never acknowledging that it's Wes. That it's Wes and not me. Mm-hmm. But I often think about that. Like for games that I'm not very like well knowledged on, I should let someone else sit in the seat and do this and have someone guest host. I don't know. It's something for the future. But
we'll think about it.
Brian, you've climbed the mountain. Wait, you know what? There we go.
You want to do the thing?
I'm gonna do the thing we did before with Wes because I think you deserve it as well. I think everyone deserves it. So we're gonna go here.
What are we doing? What's happening?
Everyone else can hear this maybe, but I can. So we've talked about Monsterhearts for nearly 2.5 hours to 3 hours.
Yep.
You've given so much knowledge to everyone how to run this game and probably how to play it and why it is such an important part of your life. What's going on for you in the future? Tell everyone what you got going on for you.
Well, we're gonna do another season. Talked about that. I got a job, keeps me busy. I mean, I got projects on the back burner, but I have no idea, like when they're gonna be available or what. In all honesty, because I'm busy. But
that's okay. You got something. People got something to look forward to in the future. That's all. Yeah.
We have. I will say. I've talked with the High Council about maybe taking one of my projects that I'm having trouble finishing it, and maybe we're gonna work together on the Kickstarter. That's a possibility. So you could think about that. I've thought about putting together some of my like tips and trips on how I run Monsterhearts into like a little like MC guide, just like Monsterhearts according to Brian, I
think that's a fine title. I'd buy that book.
Yeah. These are just stray thoughts, floating in the wind. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. There's a pandemic. I don't know what's going on.
And second, a question, I want to ask, how are you feeling? Like, personally, how is Brian feeling today? Or just in general?
I feel all right. I feel really good about all the stuff we've been talking about. But I will say this, because I feel like I'm very public about this. I'm a person that lives with depression and anxiety. I think we need to, as a society, like be more open about that. So I absolutely have down days, and I've had a down days more lately, just because of some of the wonderful things that's happening in the United States of America. Hooray! But right now, I feel good. I'm riding that deep dive high. I should plug one thing. I've been told, I've been reminded via Discord, and I've gotten so much better about checking those reminders, that there is a project that I have coming up in October that I forgot about. And that is on Wednesdays or Thursdays, I forget now. But every week in October, or at least for 4 of them if there's 5 weeks in October. How do months work? I will be part of a wonderful game called Thursdays. I will be part of a wonderful game called We're Still Here. We are going to be playing another Avery game called Dream Askew. It's MC-less. It's all about queer community during the apocalypse. It's not post-apocalyptic. It's apocalyptic. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I've never actually played it, but I've read it, and I think that's going to be really interesting. So people should absolutely tune in on Thursdays in October.
And that was organized by our very own Gehenna Valley alum, Natalie.
That's right. Natalie is facilitating for us. May also be the person who tried 3 ways to get my attention so that I plugged it.
And we got a bunch of one-shots that will be filling the Gehenna Valley spot until it returns.
That's right. Next Monday is 10 Candles.
Which, spoiler alert,
uh-oh,
yours truly will
be
in there.
That?
Yes.
Nice. And we're purposely not talking about the other games yet. We're going to sort of announce them 1 week at a time. But you will see Gehenna Valley members as part of each of those one-shots, but you won't see the whole cast until we're back for Monsterhearts 2.
And if you want to see more of Brian and you haven't been watching the Saturday Night One-Shots, go onto YouTube right now. I don't think it's up yet. It should be up in the next day if Ian gets off his butt.
What?
The Final Girl, which we played together.
Oh, has that not been up on YouTube?
No, I actually just edited it, all the parts they had like a few days ago, and sent it to Ian.
That was so much fun.
That was a lot of fun. So if you want to watch Brian play a horror game, I'm going to restart this inspirational music for hopefully the last time. If you want to see Brian play in a horror game with yours truly, Bran, Danny, and our good buddy Ben, also known as your big dad, the Hydrate Master himself, you should go check it out. 'Cause that's also a GM-less system, and it might get you ready for Dream Askew, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's very different games. One's a lot more humorous.
It is different.
But Dream Askew is gonna be amazing. From what I've read, it's an amazing system, and I'm super excited to see what you all do with it. Yet again, Brian, thank you so much for coming onto the show. Everyone watching, let me check the total stream metrics right now. We got a decent amount of people on here. Thank you everyone for tuning in today.
Yeah.
And just I had my whole big speech planned, and I just
opted to
close it. I had another speech, but I was like, okay, it's the point. So if you have requests for future deep dives you want to see, or special guests you want on, tell us using hashtag the deep dive, and tag either Gehenna Gaming at Gehenna Gaming, or tag me on Twitter at NoblemanNick, where you can find me if you want to suggest anything. Brian, where can they find you?
I am at Brian Liberge on Twitter, and Brian Liberge on Discord, and that's good enough, I think. If you want to find some of my other products, you can go to DriveThruRPG and type Brian Liberge into the search engine, or go to RPG Geek and type Brian Liberge into the search engine, or go to Amazon and type Brian Liberge into the search engine.
That's how I did my research.
Right. Go to Goodreads, because I have a Goodreads page, it turns out.
I didn't know people still had that.
It's pretty exciting. And if you want to see me come back on Deep Dive, you do all those things and pick one of the games I've worked on and tell Nick you want a deep dive on one of those.
All right, and thank you, Brian, so much for coming in. Yet again, I'm just going to say thank you, but I do have one last surprise for everyone.
Uh-oh.
Not a surprise. It's already been played, but because we talked a lot about Gehenna Valley, and it brought such a tear to our eye, I think what we're going to do is we're going to play the Season 1 credits that we did the finale for Gehenna and let everyone enjoy their favorite moments one last time.
Okay, I'm excited. I'm going to mute my mic because I'm going to turn on the volume.
Okie dokie. I'm going to mute too, so just give me a moment as I mute.
Okay, this is me. I'm stalling for time while Nick mutes. Stalling.
But you know what I want to do now?
Hey, Wild?
I want to go to the fairground. Want to go to the fairground. So, whoosh.
What were you asking me about?
Will you please come to my party on Saturday?
I'd love to, Bridget. I'll see you there. And he's just gonna hang up on.
You're a vampire?
Yeah, I could take you on a menacing drive and then we could have a strange conversation in a misty wood, but I figured this was more direct.
Is this a reference?
Don't any of you watch that Twilight movie, or is that just the last generation?
Hold Corey's eyes at the rearview mirror. Like, oh really?
Donovan grins at Karina like,
Why are you making funny faces?
Karina will grin back at Donovan.
Why are you making funny faces at each other?
Karina, did you have a special trip today?
Your phone buzzes in your pocket.
No, his phone buzzes in Karina's hand.
Oh shit!
Oh shit! Did I never take my phone back?
Well then.
Why?
Donovan will like lean in, grin, and just like let the fangs slowly pop out, and he says, I know there are strange things out there. I am one. And smile.
When I'm gone from here in seconds, you surely keep walking, head high straight ahead. Though I'm still aware that the light will turn red. Crazy in love, nothing can slow me down. I'll always keep chasing what's outside the line. Stuck in your traffic light. Traffic light, that's the yellow sign. Stuck in your traffic light, that's the yellow sign.